Imagine living in a world where people's opinions, words, and actions no longer decide how you feel, where insults don't sting, praise doesn't trap you, and judgment doesn't shake your peace. Sounds powerful, doesn't it? But be honest. How many times have you let someone's comment ruin your day, or their approval become the only thing that makes you feel good? The truth is, when you let others control your emotions, you hand over your freedom. You become a prisoner of what they think, of what they say, of how they treat you, and every time you react, you prove that their power over you is real. But it doesn't have to be this way. Today, you are going to learn the art of indifference, the Stoic way of breaking free from the grip of others. This is not about coldness, and it's not about pretending you don't care. It's about choosing what deserves your energy and what does not. It's about building a shield so strong that no outside voice can dictate your inner state. So get ready, because after this, you will never look at people's opinions the same way again. You'll stop being controlled and start living with true freedom. Most of what stresses you out is not yours to control. It's someone else's opinion, someone else's mistake, something from the past, or something that hasn't even happened yet. But here's the hard truth. The more time you spend worrying about the external, the more power you give it over your internal world. And in the end, it's not the chaos around you that breaks you. It's the chaos inside you that you never learn to calm. Stoicism begins where your illusion ends, and that illusion is control. Not the kind that leads you forward, but the kind that drains your energy as you chase after the impossible. Because here's what no one tells you. Peace doesn't come from trying to manage everything. It comes from learning what's yours and what never was, what you can change and what you must let go. That's where real strength is built, not in controlling life, but in responding to it with clarity, discipline, and acceptance. This episode isn't about running from chaos. It's about how to face it. It's about training your mind not to dominate the world, but to master the one place that's always been yours, yourself. Let's begin. Your peace begins where control ends. There's something profoundly human about wanting to control life. It starts early when we're kids trying to get our way, when we cry to be heard, when we think the world should bend to our emotions. As we grow older, that desire becomes more subtle, but no less powerful. We try to control how people see us. We try to predict the future and manipulate outcomes. We try to force peace, success, and even happiness, as if these things could be wrestled into submission. But the more we tighten our grip on life, the more it slips through our fingers. The Stoics understood this truth thousands of years ago. Epictetus said, "There is only one way to happiness, and that is to cease worrying about things which are beyond the power of our will." Read that again. It's not a poetic phrase, it's a warning. The more you chase after what's outside your control, the more you forfeit the peace that's already available inside you. Peace doesn't begin when life aligns with your plans. It begins when your mind stops demanding that it must. Imagine this. You're stuck in traffic, late for a meeting. You can shout, curse, clench your jaw, blame the other drivers, but none of that will move the cars. All it does is multiply your frustration. Now imagine instead you accept it. You breathe. You say, "This is out of my hands," but my reaction isn't. In that moment, you reclaim something most people never do, your inner authority. You didn't control the traffic, but you controlled yourself, and that is real power. Let's go deeper. Control isn't just about what happens to you, it's about how you interpret what happens. The Stoics taught that it's not events that disturb us, but our judgments about them. Someone ignores your message and you think they're mad at me. A plan fails and you think, I'm a failure. But what if neither of those things is true? What if the only thing causing your stress is the story you've attached to the situation? That's why learning to let go is not a weakness. It's a discipline. It's the decision to stop letting your peace depend on things that were never stable to begin with. The weather changes, people leave, markets crash, life moves in unpredictable waves, but your mind, your breath, your principles, these are your anchor, and you don't need to control the storm when you've learned how to hold the wheel. One of the most painful patterns we fall into is believing that if we just try harder, we'll gain control. If we explain better, they'll understand. If we give more, they'll stay. If we worry enough, we'll prevent the worst. But most of that is an illusion. You don't control how others feel. You don't control the future. You don't control how the world responds to your efforts. And here's the most liberating truth of all. You don't need to. You only need to take full ownership of what's actually yours. Your attention, your choices, your attitude, your response. That's where all your leverage is. And when you operate from that space, something shifts. Life no longer feels like a constant battle. It becomes a dance. Some steps are yours to lead, others you let go and flow. And in that flow, peace finds you. So, how do you train this mindset? Start by paying attention to your tension. Every time you feel your body tighten, ask yourself, what am I trying to control right now? Is it someone's opinion, an outcome, a situation from the past? If the answer is yes, pause, breathe, release it. Not because you don't care, but because it's not yours to carry. Let go. Not as a last resort, but as your first act of wisdom. Your peace doesn't come from bending the world to your will. It comes from aligning your will with reality. And when you can do that, not just once, but daily, moment by moment, then even in the middle of chaos, you'll find something few ever experience: stillness. Control is internal, not external. It's easy to think that control means having power over the world around us, over events, people, timing, outcomes. But the more we try to manage what lies outside us, the more life reminds us. We never really held that power. People change their minds, plans fall apart, things go wrong despite our best efforts, and yet in the middle of all that, one form of control remains untouched: internal control. That's where Stoicism builds its foundation. The Stoic doesn't chase after what he can't influence. He sharpens his awareness of what he can. Not the world, but the self. Not the chaos, but the clarity beneath it. Marcus Aurelius said, "You have power over your mind, not outside events." Realize this and you will find strength. And that's the shift. Control doesn't mean making things go your way. It means mastering how you respond when they don't. But most people are trained differently. We're taught to seek results, to fix everything, to prevent every mistake. That's why we obsess over how others see us. That's why we replay conversations in our heads. That's why we lose sleep over things we can't undo. We confuse external control with safety. We think that if we can just manage every detail, we'll finally feel okay. But what actually happens is the opposite. We become prisoners to variables we can't command. Here's the hard part. Internal control isn't flashy. You can't show it off. No one applauds you for staying calm in silence, or for choosing not to argue back, or for letting something go when your ego wanted to hold on. But those small internal victories, they build something unshakable, They build the kind of character that doesn't collapse under pressure, the kind that doesn't need the world to behave in order to be at peace. Let's say someone insults you. Your pride wants to respond, your emotions flare. But in that moment, you have a choice, not over them, but over you. Do you take the bait, or do you choose silence? Do you carry their words, or do you drop them? That moment right there is where real control lives, not in changing them, but in commanding yourself. And it's not just about emotions, it's about your focus, your energy, your attention. Where you put your mental effort each day defines who you become. If you give it away to every distraction, to every problem you can't fix, to every drama that isn't yours, then slowly your sense of power fades. You feel tired, not because life is too heavy, but because you're carrying what isn't yours. The Stoic filters life like a master. What's mine to act on? What's mine to release? There's a quiet kind of confidence that comes with this mindset, a freedom. Because when you stop trying to control the external, you free yourself from the exhausting need for perfection. You become lighter, calmer, stronger. You become the kind of person who walks into a storm and still walks straight. But this takes practice. It takes awareness. It takes pausing before reacting. It takes asking yourself daily, am I trying to control the uncontrollable, or am I leading myself with intention? Because you can't stop the tide, but you can learn how to swim. The more you train your mind to focus inward, the less shaken you'll be by what happens outward. And that's the true test of power. Not how much you command, but how little you're disturbed. Here's the challenge for the next week. Anytime something frustrates you, pause. Don't ask how to fix it. Ask, is this inside my control or outside of it? If it's inside, take action. If it's not, let it go. Not because you're weak, but because your strength is too valuable to waste. Real control doesn't shout. It doesn't seek attention. It moves silently, inwardly, reshaping how you live. Not by bending the world, but by mastering the only place you ever truly had power, yourself. Reclaim your energy from the uncontrollable. Every day, without realizing it, we leak energy, not through action, but through attention. We give it to arguments that ended hours ago, to imaginary scenarios that may never happen, to people who are no longer in our lives, to outcomes we fear but cannot influence. And by the end of the day, we wonder why we feel so mentally exhausted, even though we didn't physically move much. The truth is, exhaustion often isn't about what you did. It's about what you carried. The Stoics understood that energy is sacred, not in some abstract spiritual way, but in a practical daily sense. Your energy is your most limited resource. Where you direct it shapes your mental state, your productivity, your peace, your ability to think clearly. So the question becomes, how much of that energy are you wasting on what doesn't belong to you? Most of us don't realize how deeply entangled we are with the uncontrollable. We feel responsible for how others feel, how they interpret our words, how life unfolds for them. We think it's compassion or duty or loyalty, but it's not. When you constantly pour your energy into fixing what was never yours to begin with, you don't just lose time, you lose your sense of inner balance. And over time, that becomes your normal state. Constantly reacting, constantly anxious, constantly tired. Reclaiming your energy is not an act of selfishness. It's an act of responsibility. Because when you pull your focus back to what's yours, your choices, your discipline, your attention, your emotional responses, you become more powerful, not less. You don't become cold or distant. You become centered. you begin to choose what's worth your time and what's not. Take a simple example. Someone disrespects you. You can replay it for hours, analyze every word, tell 10 friends about it, or you can acknowledge it, set a boundary if needed, and move on. One of those choices drains you, the other restores you. It's not about pretending things don't affect you. It's about not letting them dominate you. Or think of how often we waste energy imagining the future. What if this happens? What if they don't respond? What if I fail? We tell ourselves that worrying is preparation, but it's not. Worry is a mental rehearsal of pain. It drains the present moment of clarity and replaces it with fear. The Stoic approach is different. Do what you can. Prepare with reason, then let go. You can't outthink uncertainty, but you can choose not to be consumed by it. And this principle applies not just to individuals, but to how you view the world. The news cycle, social media, the endless stream of opinions and events outside your control. If you let them, they'll steal your peace, shape your emotions, and dominate your mental space. But you have a choice. You can unplug. You can limit what you expose yourself to. You can reclaim your focus, not by ignoring the world, but by filtering it. This is what reclaiming energy looks like in real life. Unsubscribing from emotional chaos, choosing your responses, protecting your inner space like you would protect your home. You don't open your front door to every stranger. Why open your mind to every worry? And yes, this takes discipline. It means being honest about your patterns. It means saying, no, I won't overthink that again. No, I won't spend the day dwelling on something I can't change. No, I won't waste my energy on someone who doesn't even value it. That kind of self-control doesn't make you cold. It makes you clear, because clarity is power. And when you finally stop giving your energy to the uncontrollable, you'll be shocked at how much lighter you feel and how much more you can do with what's actually yours. Let go of illusions of power over others. One of the most draining habits we carry is the illusion that we can control how other people behave. That if we say the right thing, act the right way, give enough, stay calm enough, they'll change. That they'll treat us with more respect. That they'll love us the way we love them. That they'll understand us, value us, or finally give us closure. But this is the trap. The false hope that our inner peace depends on someone else's transformation. It doesn't. It never has. Because no matter how thoughtful, patient, or generous you are, you don't control how others think, feel, or act. And trying to manipulate their behavior, even with good intentions, is not connection. It's control in disguise. The Stoics taught that to live in harmony with nature is to accept people as they are, not as we wish them to be. That doesn't mean you tolerate mistreatment or settle for less than you deserve. It means you stop trying to force people to become what they are not ready or willing to be. You set boundaries, not ultimatums. You walk away not to punish, but to protect your peace. Because trying to change someone who doesn't want to change is like trying to hold the wind in your hand. It will slip through, and all you'll be left with is frustration. Think of how much mental weight we carry from relationships where we keep adjusting, explaining, hoping. We think if I just do more, they'll see, or if I can make them understand, maybe things will change. But that cycle turns into emotional servitude. You slowly begin to abandon your own values just to keep the connection alive. And in doing so, you don't just lose energy, you lose yourself. True freedom begins when you accept this. People are who they choose to be, not who you need them to be. Your responsibility ends at your side of the equation. You can offer love, but you can't demand it in return. You can show respect, but you can't control how someone responds. You can speak the truth, but you can't force them to listen. And the sooner you let go of that illusion, the sooner you reclaim the energy you've been pouring into the impossible. Letting go doesn't mean closing your heart. It means opening your eyes. It means seeing clearly that influence is not the same as power. You may inspire someone, you may support their growth, but the moment you try to bend their will to meet your needs, you've stepped out of love and into fear. And that fear of being misunderstood, unloved, rejected is what keeps us clinging. We think control will save us from pain, but it only creates more. It creates tension, resistance, emotional warfare. You find yourself exhausted from conversations that never go anywhere, from trying to please someone who keeps shifting the goalposts. And all along, there's a simple truth waiting to be seen. It's not your job to change them. It's your job to choose how you respond to them. So what does it look like to let go of this illusion? It looks like no longer chasing apologies you'll never get. No longer crafting messages you won't send. No longer molding yourself into a shape that pleases someone else. It looks like walking away from people who benefit from your silence and reclaiming the voice you gave up trying to keep the peace. Because peace isn't found in controlling others. It's found in setting yourself free from the need to. The Stoic doesn't beg for understanding. He lives with integrity and allows the world to respond however it chooses. And that's a hard path, because it requires surrendering your need to be seen a certain way. But in that surrender, you gain something stronger than approval. You gain self-respect. So ask yourself, who are you still trying to change? Whose behavior are you obsessing over? Who are you shrinking for? Hoping that if you're good enough, they'll finally get it. And what would happen if you just let go? Not out of spite, not to prove a point, but because your energy deserves better, because your peace is more valuable than someone else's opinion, and because the only thing more exhausting than trying to change others is realizing you never had to. Accept reality to master it. Most suffering begins not with what is, but with what we refuse to accept. It's not the situation itself that crushes us. It's our resistance to it. We wish it were different. We think it's unfair. We cling to how it should be. And in doing so, we trap ourselves in an invisible cage, a war with reality that no one ever wins. This is one of the hardest truths Stoicism offers. Acceptance is not giving up. It's stepping into clarity. It's looking life straight in the eyes and saying, "This is what it is, and now I choose how to meet it." That's not weakness. That's mastery. Because when you stop wishing the rain away, you can finally decide what to do with the storm. But let's be honest, it's uncomfortable to accept things we don't like. It feels passive. We fear it means surrender. If I accept that I failed, does that mean I stop trying? If I accept that they're gone, does that mean it didn't matter? If I accept this pain, does that mean I'm okay with it? The answer is no. Acceptance isn't resignation, it's recognition. It's the first step in reclaiming power, because you can't change what you won't face, and you can't improve a reality you keep denying. Epictetus taught, "Make the best use of what is in your power, and take the rest as it happens." That's the core of Stoicism, not blind positivity, not passive suffering, but practical wisdom. If something is broken, fix it. If something can't be fixed, adjust your relationship to it. Either way, start with what is, not what you wish. Think about how much time we spend fighting reality, hoping someone will be different, wishing we had a different childhood, resisting a diagnosis, denying the truth about a relationship, about a job, about ourselves. And all the while, Reality sits patiently, waiting for us to stop struggling long enough to see it clearly. Acceptance doesn't mean liking everything. It means being honest about what's here now, because only from that place of honesty can you act with wisdom. You can't navigate life if your map is based on fantasy. The Stoic begins with what's real, no matter how uncomfortable, because from there, action is clear. Imagine this. You lose something important, a job, a friend, a plan you poured your heart into. You have two options. You can resist. This shouldn't have happened. You can replay every moment, every detail, searching for a different outcome. Or you can accept this happened. I didn't want it. I didn't choose it. But here it is. Now what? That shift changes everything. It frees your energy. It gives you direction. It puts you back in motion. And this doesn't just apply to big moments. It's in the little ones too. The missed train, the rude comment, the long delay, the unexpected change. Every time something interrupts your flow, you're given a choice. Resist or accept, react or respond, panic or pause. And the more you choose acceptance, the more resilient you become. Not because life gets easier, but because you stop wasting your strength on what cannot be undone. One of the most powerful forms of acceptance is self-acceptance, because often the hardest thing to face is ourselves, our flaws, our regrets, our limitations. But the Stoic doesn't avoid the mirror. He uses it. He looks with courage, not judgment. He says, "This is who I am today, and I take full responsibility." That's where growth begins, not in shame, but in truth. So if there's something in your life you've been resisting, a truth you've avoided, a change you've postponed, a reality you keep rewriting, take this as a sign not to give up, but to wake up, to step out of the illusion and into awareness. Because once you stop fighting what is, you can start building what could be, and that is real freedom. Control your thoughts and actions only. In a world where everything seems urgent, where opinions fly faster than facts, where expectations from others mount by the hour, and where we are constantly told what we should think, feel, or become, it's easy to forget the simple truth. The only things truly under your control are your thoughts and your actions. Nothing more, nothing less. This is the core of Stoic teaching, and also its greatest challenge, because the human mind is wired to grasp, to judge, to anticipate. We think if we worry enough, we'll be safe. If we plan enough, we'll stay ahead. If we think about someone long enough, they'll change. But all of that is mental noise, activity without authority. We mistake overthinking for control, when in reality it's just fear in disguise. Marcus Aurelius wrote, "You have power over your mind, not outside events." Realize this, and you will find strength. He didn't say you have power over outcomes or over others or over the past, just your mind and what you choose to do with it. But let's pause and really consider that, because it sounds simple, but it's not easy. Controlling your thoughts doesn't mean suppressing them. It means directing them. It means training your mind like a muscle. When the voice of doubt shows up, you don't argue with it, you observe it. When jealousy creeps in, you don't feed it, you reframe it. When anger rises, you don't explode, you investigate. You shift from being a passenger in your mind to becoming the driver. And when it comes to your actions, the same principle applies. You don't control how people receive you, but you control the intention behind your words. You don't control what the world offers, but you control how you show up in it. Your values, your standards, your discipline, that's your domain. And when you stay rooted there, you become unshakable. This isn't just philosophy. It's the foundation of emotional maturity. Immature minds want to control others. They want to change external reality before they've changed their internal state. But the Stoic understands your freedom begins the moment you stop trying to rewrite the outside and start mastering the inside. Imagine a day where every time something upset you, someone ignored you, a plan failed, a stranger was rude, you paused and asked, "What part of this is mine to control?" And then, instead of reacting, you chose your response. You redirected your thoughts. You recalibrated your actions. That's not weakness. That's command. That's what it means to live with intention, not reaction. It also means letting go of blame. If your thoughts and actions are yours to control, then so is your responsibility. You're not a victim of your emotions. You're the author of them. And when you slip, when you act impulsively, when you let negativity guide you, you don't beat yourself up. You realign. You ask, what belief led me here? What action can I take now? That's how a Stoic moves, not with shame, but with awareness. This level of self-governance takes time. It's a daily practice, and it won't make you immune to pain, but it will give you clarity through it. The world might still shake, but you won't crumble. Not because you control the chaos, but because you control your mind within it. So if you're overwhelmed right now, if you feel scattered, reactive, emotionally pulled in every direction, come back to this question. What do I control right now? If it's not your thought, let it pass. If it's not your action, let it go. Because the more you focus on what's yours, the more power you reclaim from what isn't. And when you consistently live from that place, thought by thought, choice by choice, you'll realize something liberating. You don't need to control everything to be at peace with anything. The Stoic mind filters chaos through clarity. Chaos is inevitable. Life is unpredictable, messy, and often unfair. Things break, people disappoint, plans unravel, and it all happens without warning. But here's the Stoic truth. Chaos itself is not the enemy. It's how we filter that chaos that determines whether it destroys us or transforms us. Most people react to life like a sponge. They absorb everything, every insult, every fear, every failure. The Stoic, however, is not a sponge. He is a filter. He lets the noise pass through and holds on only to what matters. What gives someone this ability? It's not cold detachment. It's not emotional suppression. It's clarity. And clarity begins with self-awareness. A Stoic mind doesn't avoid chaos. It watches it. It observes. It asks, is this event as terrible as it feels? Or is it my interpretation that's fueling the fire? That simple pause creates distance. And in that distance, wisdom grows. You see, we live in a world that rewards speed, instant reactions, hot takes, snap judgments. But the Stoic mind resists that impulse. It slows down, it breathes, it waits. And in that space between stimulus and response, something powerful happens. Choice. You stop being a puppet pulled by your emotions and become a person acting from values. Clarity means you don't get dragged into every storm, not because you don't care, but because you care enough to protect your peace. You stop giving your energy to things that only want to consume it. You stop fighting battles that aren't yours. You stop answering questions that don't need answers. Not everything requires your reaction, and not every situation deserves your explanation. Take this example. Someone speaks to you with disrespect. Your first reaction is heat. Maybe anger, maybe pain. But the Stoic mind doesn't act on heat. It examines it. It asks, is this about me, or is this about their own struggle? And often when you dig deeper, you find that people's behavior says more about them than about you. Clarity gives you that perspective. It helps you choose grace over ego, silence over drama, peace over pride. But let's be clear, clarity isn't passive. It doesn't mean you let life walk over you. It means you choose your stance intentionally. Sometimes clarity tells you to walk away. Sometimes it tells you to speak up. Sometimes it tells you to sit with the discomfort instead of numbing it with distraction. But whatever it tells you, it comes from a place of reason, not reactivity. Developing this filter takes time. It's a practice, not a personality trait. It means questioning your assumptions. It means detaching from the story you're telling yourself. It means understanding that your thoughts are not always facts. And most of all, it means reminding yourself daily, what I feel is real. But that doesn't mean it's true. The Stoic mind uses clarity as a compass, not to escape the world, but to engage with it more skillfully. It knows that peace isn't the absence of problems. It's the presence of perspective. And when you train your mind to slow down, to ask better questions, to choose what deserves your reaction, then even in the middle of a storm, you will move with intention, not panic. So here's the reflection. How often are you reacting from emotion instead of responding from clarity? How much chaos in your life is created not by events, but by your interpretation of those events? And what would your life feel like if you filtered your world through wisdom instead of noise? Train your mind to see clearly, and chaos will lose its power over you. Strength is built in surrender to what is. It sounds contradictory at first. The idea that surrender could be a form of strength. We're conditioned to think of strength as resistance, as pushing through, standing tall, never yielding. But the truth is, some of the most powerful moments in life come not when we fight, but when we stop fighting. When we stop resisting what already is and start aligning with it. Surrender in the Stoic sense is not about giving up. It's not laziness and it's not defeat. It's the disciplined recognition of reality. It's looking at a situation honestly and saying, this is the truth right now. I may not like it, but I won't waste my energy pretending it isn't. So that's not weakness, that's clarity. Under pressure and in that clarity, you begin to respond with wisdom, not just reaction. Think about this. When you get caught in a current while swimming, thrashing against it only makes you sink faster. But if you surrender to the current, not in panic, but with presence, you conserve energy, you float, you breathe, and from that calm you gain the strength to navigate, to redirect, to reach the shore. Life works the same way. You can resist every change, every loss, every unexpected event, or you can surrender to what is and reclaim your power to respond. Well, the Stoics knew that much of human suffering doesn't come from what happens. It comes from our refusal to accept it. We want things to be different. We replay how it could have gone. We hold on to should have been like it's a lifeline, but all it does is drown us. Seneca wrote, "Fate leads the willing and drags the unwilling." When you surrender to what is, you move with life. When you resist, you get dragged. And surrender isn't just about the big moments like loss or heartbreak or failure. It's about the daily ones too. The small frustrations, the missed opportunities, the delay in plans, the unexpected detour. A Stoic learns to see these not as enemies, but as invitations. Each one is a chance to practice letting go, to release the grip of control, and to say, I will meet this moment as it is, not as I demand it to be. It takes far more courage to surrender than to struggle endlessly, because surrender requires trust. Not blind optimism, but deep, reasoned trust. Trust in your ability to adapt. Trust in life's movement. Trust in the idea that fighting the inevitable only makes it heavier. And in that trust, you begin to conserve something precious. Your strength. Strength, then, isn't found in how much you can carry, but in how well you can release. It's found in your ability to stand calm in the face of the unchangeable. To say, this happened. I feel it. I grieve it. And still, I move forward. That is real power. That is emotional maturity. So, if there's something in your life right now that you're resisting, a truth you keep avoiding, a change you keep denying, a reality you keep trying to bend, ask yourself, what would happen if I stopped resisting? Not because I agree with it, not because I'm giving up, but because I want to use my energy to respond, not to wrestle shadows. Surrender doesn't mean silence. It doesn't mean inaction. It means your actions are guided by acceptance, not illusion. And that changes everything. You move from force to flow, from tension to clarity, from struggle to strength. In a world obsessed with control, the one who surrenders with wisdom stands out, not as weak, but as centered. Choose intentional response over reaction. Every moment of your life presents you with a fork in the road. One path is reaction, fast, automatic, often emotional. The other is response, slow, considered, and intentional. And while reaction might feel powerful in the moment, it often leads to regret. Response, on the other hand, may feel quiet, but it builds character. It preserves dignity, and most importantly, it gives you back control. The difference between the two is not just timing, it's consciousness. Reaction is what happens when you let your emotions drive the car. Response is when you acknowledge those emotions but keep your hands on the wheel. The Stoics believed that the gap between stimulus and action is sacred. That's where your freedom lives. You can't always choose what happens to you, but you can always choose what happens through you. That split second, that breath, that pause, that moment of awareness is your opportunity to rise above your lower instincts and live according to your values. Let's take an example. Someone cuts you off in traffic. The instant reaction is rage, maybe even yelling, honking, stewing in frustration for the next 20 minutes. And for what? The Stoic would pause, ask, is this worth my peace? Will this matter tomorrow? Is this event truly deserving of my energy? Or is it my pride reacting to a moment I can't control? That pause, that internal interrogation, is how you interrupt the cycle. Because most of our reactions are inherited, conditioned, unquestioned. We absorb them from our families, our environments, our past wounds. But response is a conscious act. It says, this time I choose differently. I will not repeat the pattern. I will not let this moment define me. And this practice extends far beyond traffic or inconveniences. It touches how you deal with criticism, disappointment, betrayal, even success. When someone misunderstands you, do you defend impulsively, or do you listen and clarify with purpose? When you're hurt, do you lash out, or do you take space, reflect, and communicate with maturity? These are not just emotional habits. They are the bricks of your character. Choosing response means recognizing that power does not lie in domination. It lies in composure. Anyone can yell, anyone can panic, Anyone can strike back, but it takes inner strength to remain calm, to respond from principle, not pressure. That's the kind of strength the world feels even in your silence. Marcus Aurelius practiced this constantly. As Emperor of Rome, he had the power to punish or reward instantly. But in his writings, he constantly reminded himself, "Don't be carried away by emotion. Let reason guide you. Be firm but fair." He understood that leadership and life is not about reacting to every impulse. It's about mastering them. So, how do you develop this response muscle? You begin by noticing each time something stirs you. Ask yourself, is this a reaction or a response? You give yourself space before replying. You train your nervous system to associate discomfort with curiosity, not chaos. You become less interested in being right and more committed to being wise. You'll still feel emotions. That's part of being human. But the Stoic knows that emotions are messengers, not masters. You listen, but you don't obey blindly. You acknowledge them, then choose how to act. And over time, something beautiful happens. You become less reactive, less drained, more deliberate, more respected. People feel the difference in you, and more importantly, you feel the difference in yourself. You stop being a slave to the world around you. You become someone who responds with depth, not noise. So the next time life presses your buttons, pause. Ask yourself, do I want to add more chaos or more clarity? Because every time you choose intentional response over reaction, you become more of the person you're meant to be. True control is self-control. When people talk about power, they usually think of influence, dominance, authority, the ability to change things around them. But the Stoics had a radically different definition. To them, the highest form of control was not what you commanded outside, but what you mastered inside. And nothing exemplifies that more than self-control. Self-control is the invisible strength that governs your choices when no one is watching. It's the discipline to hold your tongue when anger flares, the restraint to not indulge in every craving, the commitment to act with integrity even when it costs you. It's not about being cold or robotic. It's about being aligned. It's about not letting every emotion dictate your behavior and not allowing impulse to override principle. Epictetus said it best. No man is free who is not master of himself. And that mastery doesn't come through force. It comes through awareness, through daily practice, through failure, correction, and quiet repetition. You don't wake up one day with self-control. You build it slowly, like muscle. Every time you say no to what weakens you and yes to what strengthens you, you become freer. Not freer from rules, but freer from chaos. Think about it. How often do we blame others or the world for our emotional storms? We say, "They made me angry. They broke me. The world is unfair." But that's the mindset of someone who's outsourced their power. The Stoic refuses to live like that. He doesn't pretend feelings don't exist, but he does insist on governing how he responds to them. Self-control gives you space. Space between thought and action, space between desire and decision, space between chaos and clarity. And in that space, you don't just survive, you rise. You become someone others can trust. Someone you can trust because you know you won't betray yourself in a moment of weakness. But self-control isn't just about saying no to temptation. It's about saying yes to what matters. It's choosing purpose over pleasure, progress over comfort, discipline over distraction. And that's what separates the Stoic from the average mind. He doesn't seek to control the world. He seeks to control the one thing that defines every moment of his life, himself. This control shows up in small, ordinary ways. Waking up when you said you would, finishing the task you wanted to quit, holding back from proving your point in a pointless argument, choosing silence over drama, choosing rest over burnout. None of these acts are flashy, but together they form a kind of armor, one that protects your focus, your values, your time. And it's in those small acts that true strength is revealed. Not in grand gestures, not in domination, but in quiet consistency. You don't need to control the noise of the world when you found the volume knob inside yourself. So if you're searching for control, start here. Not with the world, not with others, with your thoughts, your words, your actions. That's where the battle is. That's where the victory is. Not because the world gets easier, but because you get stronger. And in the end, that's what Stoicism teaches. Your greatest power isn't what you can control. It's who you become when you do. The world will always be unpredictable. People will disappoint. Plans will fall apart. Life will test your patience, your strength, and your sense of meaning. But through all of that, there's one truth that remains steady. You are not here to control the chaos. You are here to master yourself within it. That's what Stoicism offers. Not a perfect life, but a powerful mind. A mind that knows what's worth holding on to and what to release. A mind that pauses before reacting, that filters pain through clarity, that doesn't surrender to fear, but doesn't waste energy trying to command the uncontrollable either. If there's one thing to take from this episode, it's this. Your peace is not waiting for life to calm down. It's waiting for you to stop fighting what was never yours to fight. You don't need to control the future to walk into it with strength. You just need to control your breath, your thoughts, your next step. So step lightly, choose wisely, and carry this simple principle with you. The more you master yourself, the less the world can shake you. If this episode helped you find even a small shift in your thinking, share it, reflect on it, let it echo throughout your day, and most of all, live it. We move further to something deeper. In the endless rush of modern life, we are constantly pulled and pushed by external forces. A harsh word, an unexpected setback, a moment of criticism, and suddenly we find ourselves swept away by emotion, reacting before we even know what we're reacting to. But what if there was another way? What if, instead of being at the mercy of every emotional wave, you could learn to stand steady at the center of your own being? This is the ancient art of not reacting, a practice refined by the Stoics thousands of years ago, and as relevant today as it was then. It is not about becoming cold or indifferent. It is about becoming free, free from the tyranny of impulse, free from the chaos of unchecked emotion, free to choose your response rather than being enslaved by your reactions. Will you allow your peace to be shattered by the noise of the world, by a careless word, by a fleeting discomfort? Today is an invitation to remember that freedom does not come from controlling life. It comes from controlling our response to life. This is not about suppressing emotions. It's about mastering the gap between what happens and what we choose to do next. In that gap lives your power. In that gap you become unshakable. 1. Understanding your emotional triggers. Every emotional reaction we have is a messenger. It comes carrying a story, not always about the present moment, but often about something much older, something that left its imprint on us when we were too young, too unguarded to defend ourselves. To truly begin mastering your emotions, you must first become a careful student of yourself, learning to read these emotional signals like ancient letters written across the landscape of your memory. Think about the last time you overreacted. Maybe someone criticized your idea, and before you even had time to think, anger surged in you like a tidal wave. Or perhaps someone ignored you, and the sting you felt was sharper than the situation seemed to deserve. In those moments, the present is only the surface. Underneath, there is history. There are the childhood moments of not feeling heard, the betrayals that taught you to guard your pride, the fears you never spoke aloud. These are your emotional triggers, the unseen scripts that guide your reactions without asking your permission. The Stoics understood this intimately. Marcus Aurelius wrote, "If you are pained by any external thing, it is not this thing that disturbs you, but your judgment about it." And those judgments, where do they come from, if not from our deepest, most formative experiences? To gain control over our emotional lives, we must stop seeing our reactions as isolated accidents and start seeing them as the visible tips of invisible structures within us. This work begins with awareness without judgment, without blame. Simply start observing yourself. When a strong emotion rises, pause. Ask yourself, what am I really reacting to? Is it just this situation or something more? Notice the patterns. Maybe criticism consistently wounds you more than it should. Maybe being left out or misunderstood taps into an old loneliness you thought you had outgrown. These are not signs of weakness. They are invitations to know yourself more deeply. Self-awareness is the bridge between being controlled by your emotions and commanding them. Imagine walking into a dark room filled with obstacles. Without light, you trip and fall at every step. But when you turn on the light, when you bring awareness to what's in the room, you move with purpose, with clarity. You no longer blame the darkness. You simply navigate it with wisdom. And here lies a subtle Stoic truth. It's not about eliminating all emotional triggers. It's about seeing them clearly so they no longer hold power over you. Epictetus taught that events themselves are neutral. It's our interpretations, our attachments, our old wounds that give them emotional weight. When you uncover the origin of your triggers, you take the first step toward neutrality, toward freedom. This journey will not happen in a single day. It is the daily practice of observation, reflection, and compassion toward yourself. Sometimes you will catch the trigger before it explodes. Sometimes you won't. That's part of the process. But each moment of awareness is a victory. Each insight is a brick laid in the foundation of your emotional resilience. Ask yourself often, where did this reaction begin? Is it really about now? Or am I carrying an old story into this moment? Over time, you will find that the emotional waves that once knocked you over begin to lose their force. You will stand steadier, not because life is easier, but because you are stronger. Understanding your emotional triggers is not about becoming emotionless. It is about becoming free. Free to feel without being ruled. Free to respond without being trapped. Free to live without carrying the invisible burdens of a past you no longer owe anything to. This is the quiet revolution within you, the first step on the path to unshakable peace. 2. Noticing the body, your emotional alarm system. Before the mind even has time to shape a thought, the body has already spoken. Long before you tell yourself, I'm angry or I'm anxious, your body is whispering the news. A quickened heartbeat, a sudden tightness in the chest, a tension building in the shoulders, a shallow breath you didn't even realize you were holding. The body is the earliest messenger of emotion, and if you learn to listen carefully, it becomes your most loyal ally in emotional mastery. Too often we live disconnected from our own bodies, lost in thought, rushing through tasks. We barely notice the physical sensations rising and falling within us all day long. But every emotion, every surge of feeling has a physical signature. Anger might tighten your jaw, anxiety might flutter in your stomach, sadness might weigh on your chest like a stone. These sensations are not accidents. They are alarms, soft at first, louder if ignored, designed to bring your awareness back to yourself. The Stoics believed in training the mind through observation. They spoke less about the body directly, but their practices reflect a deep respect for self-awareness in all its forms. Marcus Aurelius often wrote about watching his own mind as if from a distance, observing its movements without judgment. Today we understand that true observation must begin not just in the mind, but in the body, the very place where reactions are born. Noticing the body is the beginning of reclaiming the sacred pause between stimulus and response. Instead of being swept away by anger, fear, jealousy, or sadness, you feel the first ripple. You recognize, something is happening inside me. And in that recognition, you open a door where choice lives, a door where you are no longer a prisoner of your instincts, but an active participant in your experience. When a situation stirs emotion in you, train yourself to check inward first. Instead of firing off a defensive remark, breathe into the tension you feel. Instead of retreating in silent resentment, place a hand gently on your own chest and notice the heartbeat. Slow down. Ask yourself, what is my body telling me before my mind tries to explain it away? This practice of embodied awareness is simple but not easy. It demands presence. It demands patience. It demands a willingness to feel discomfort without running from it. In many ways, the body is more honest than the mind. The mind can rationalize, deny, distort. But the body, it tells the truth plainly. If you feel unsafe, your muscles will tighten. If you feel unseen, your breath will shallow. These signals are not weaknesses to overcome. They are invitations to deeper understanding. And with understanding comes choice. If you notice your body early enough, you can intervene. A few slow, deep breaths can soften the storm before it explodes. Relaxing your shoulders consciously can send a signal of safety back to your nervous system. Slowing your breath can break the rising spiral of panic before it consumes you. Mastery does not mean you never feel these waves. It means you learn to surf them instead of drowning in them. Seneca once said, "We suffer more in imagination than in reality." Much of that suffering is amplified because we miss the body's early warnings and let our imagination run unchecked. But if you anchor yourself first in sensation, in what is real right now, you strip the emotion of much of its destructive momentum. You ground yourself in the present, where clarity is still possible. Imagine your body as an emotional early warning system, a living compass that alerts you to storms before they fully form. Each signal is a chance to choose a different path, to step back, to breathe, to respond from wisdom rather than reflex. This is not repression. This is not avoidance. This is the highest form of emotional respect, listening fully before acting. In time, this practice becomes second nature. You will move through the world with a new sensitivity, not hypersensitivity, but awareness. You will notice the flicker of anger before it becomes rage, the tightening of anxiety before it becomes paralysis. And because you notice, you can navigate. You can choose patience over impulsiveness, calm over chaos, clarity over confusion. Noticing the body is not a small practice. It is the foundation of all emotional control. For without the ability to feel our inner landscape clearly, We are forever at the mercy of external winds. Master the signals of your body, and you begin to master the storms of your life. 3. Creating a pause before you react. There is a moment so brief, so subtle between the stimulus and the response, a fraction of time where freedom lives. Most people miss it. They move straight from feeling to reacting like a spark meeting dry grass. But the greatest strength we can cultivate is the ability to find that space, to expand it, and to live inside it. This is where mastery begins. Not in suppressing emotion, not in denying it, but in learning to choose our action instead of being enslaved by impulse. The world often praises quick reactions. Be fast, be sharp, respond immediately. But wisdom, true wisdom, moves differently. It does not rush. It does not flinch. It waits, listens, and only then responds. The Stoics understood this timelessly. Epictetus taught that while we cannot control external events, we can always control our judgment about them. That judgment happens in the pause. Without it, we are nothing more than puppets pulled by the strings of circumstance. Creating a pause is not easy at first. Our biology is wired for speed, fight, flight, freeze. When we feel threatened, slighted, embarrassed, the body floods with energy, preparing us to act. This instinct once saved lives. Today, it ruins conversations, careers, relationships. In the modern world, it is not the strongest who thrive, but those who can breathe through the first wave of emotion and choose a response that aligns with their highest values, not their momentary feelings. How do we build this pause? It starts with the simplest practice. Breathe. When you feel an emotion rising, don't speak, don't act, just breathe. A slow, conscious breath interrupts the chain reaction of impulsivity. It sends a signal to your nervous system that you are not under immediate threat, that there is time, that you are safe enough to think. Alongside breathing comes reflection. As you inhale and exhale slowly, ask yourself quietly, what am I about to do? Is it necessary? Is it kind? Is it wise? These questions create just enough distance between you and the emotion that you can see it clearly. Not as a master you must obey, but as a messenger you can choose to heed or release. At first it will feel unnatural. The impulse to react quickly is strong, conditioned by years of habit. You might feel foolish taking a breath instead of snapping back. You might feel vulnerable, pausing when everything inside you demands action. But over time, you will discover a deeper kind of strength emerging, the kind that cannot be provoked, the kind that remains rooted even when the winds of anger, fear, or shame blow fiercely. Marcus Aurelius captured this perfectly. You have power over your mind, not outside events. Realize this, and you will find strength. Notice he does not say you will find weakness. Strength is found in restraint, not reactivity. It is in the quiet refusal to be dragged by passing emotions that we discover the immovable center within ourselves. This practice of pausing is not about becoming passive. It's not about letting others walk over you or staying silent when action is needed. It's about choosing your action consciously. Sometimes after pausing, you may still need to speak firmly to defend a boundary, to assert your needs. But the difference is, you will act from clarity, not from chaos, from principle, not from panic. Imagine yourself as a musician. Every note matters, but so do the silences between the notes. Without the pause, the music becomes noise. Your life is the same. Every word you speak, every action you take, is part of a song you're composing, a song of character, of integrity, of mastery. The pauses are not emptiness. They are where meaning is made. And so train yourself gently, patiently, to live into the pause. Start small. When you feel annoyed at a comment, pause. When fear grips you after a mistake, pause. When pride tempts you to lash out, pause. Even one deep breath, even 1 second of reflection can change the entire trajectory of a moment, and sometimes of a relationship, of a career, of a life. With time, the pause will grow. What once felt like an impossible effort will become a natural rhythm. You will not be a slave to every feeling that passes through you. You will be free, free to choose, free to respond, free to remain at peace even when the world around you is losing its own. Create the pause. Live in it. Protect it. For in that small sacred space between stimulus and response, you hold the key to an unbreakable life. 4. Practicing mindfulness in daily life. We often think of mindfulness as something distant, almost sacred, a practice reserved for silent retreats, for meditation cushions, for moments stolen from the rush of daily life. But the truth is far simpler and far more profound. Mindfulness is not an event you attend or a ritual you perform. It is a way of being, a way of breathing, walking, eating, speaking, where presence becomes the thread that weaves meaning through even the smallest actions. At its heart, mindfulness is the practice of returning again and again to the reality of now. It is noticing your life as it unfolds instead of missing it while chasing thoughts about the past or worries about the future. The Stoics, though they never used the word mindfulness, embodied this spirit fully. Marcus Aurelius, in his Meditations, reminds himself again and again to come back to the task at hand, to stay rooted in the present, to act with full attention and integrity, no matter how small the act. And yet, how often do we drift? How often do we live entire days in a haze of automaticity, going through motions without true awareness, eating without tasting, listening without hearing, speaking without intention? In these moments, life itself passes us by, not because it is moving too fast, but because we are not truly there to meet it. To reclaim your mind, to begin mastering your emotional responses, you must first reclaim your attention. Practicing mindfulness in daily life is the art of doing just that. It starts with simple invitations. When you eat, eat. Notice the flavors, the textures, the movement of your hand to your mouth. When you walk, walk. Feel the ground beneath your feet, the rhythm of your breathing, the way the air brushes your skin. When you speak, speak. Listen fully to yourself and to the other without preparing your next words in your mind. Each ordinary action holds within it the opportunity for extraordinary presence. The power of mindfulness is not merely in calming the mind, though that happens too, but in sharpening perception, in allowing you to notice the rising flicker of anger before it becomes a fire, to catch the subtle beginning of impatience, of sadness, of pride, before they carry you into actions you might regret. Mindfulness is the slow strengthening of your internal observer, the wise part of you that can step back, see clearly, and choose consciously. It is tempting to believe that such awareness requires more time, more space, more silence than modern life affords. But mindfulness is not about adding something new to your day. It is about changing the quality of what is already there. Washing dishes can be mindfulness. Writing an email can be mindfulness. Sitting in traffic can be mindfulness, if you are fully there instead of lost in resentment or worry. Seneca once said, "True happiness is to enjoy the present without anxious dependence upon the future." That is mindfulness, the art of sinking into the richness of the present moment without demanding it be different, without needing it to promise you more. And mindfulness is not passivity. It is not an escape from life's duties or challenges. It is an engagement with life at its most authentic level. When you are present, you become more effective, not less. Your actions carry more power because they are not diluted by distraction. Your words cut deeper because they are chosen with care. Your emotions lose their tyrannical grip because you catch them in their infancy before they gather unstoppable momentum. The path of mindfulness begins with small choices. One breath noticed, one conversation given full attention, one meal eaten without screens, without rushing, without distraction. Do not underestimate these small acts. Like drops of water carving stone, their power accumulates slowly, invisibly, until one day you look back and realize you have changed. Your mind is clearer, your heart is steadier, your life feels richer, not because circumstances have improved, but because you have finally arrived inside your own existence. And when life's inevitable storms come, as they always do, mindfulness becomes your anchor. It does not stop the rain, but it keeps you from being swept away. It does not eliminate sorrow or anger, but it allows you to hold them gently, to see them clearly, to respond with wisdom instead of reflex. The great secret is this: the life you are searching for, the peace you are chasing, the strength you long for. They are not somewhere else waiting to be found. They are here in this breath, in this step, in this conversation, always here, always waiting for you to notice. Practice mindfulness in your daily life, and you will discover that presence is not only a practice, it is a homecoming. 5. Cultivating deep self-awareness. To know yourself is the beginning of all wisdom. Yet in a world that constantly pulls our attention outward, to news, to noise, to the endless movements of others, turning inward has become a rare, almost radical act. Self-awareness is not merely noticing what you do, it is understanding why you do it. It is the art of holding a mirror to your own mind without distortion, without defense, without fear. Most people live in reaction to themselves, not in relationship with themselves. They move through the world dragged by moods they do not understand, by desires they cannot explain, by fears they refuse to name. In the absence of self-awareness, emotions do not serve us. They rule us. But when you cultivate deep self-awareness, you begin to see every thought, every feeling, every reaction is not a random event, but a thread woven into the fabric of your inner world. The Stoics urged constant introspection. Marcus Aurelius wrote to himself, "When you arise in the morning, think of what a precious privilege it is to be alive, to breathe, to think, to enjoy, to love." But he also spent countless pages questioning his own motives, checking his own impulses, observing his own judgments. This was not self-criticism, it was self-clarity. Without clarity, freedom is impossible. Cultivating deep self-awareness begins with a simple practice: observation without judgment. Notice your thoughts as they pass through your mind. Watch your emotional waves as they rise and fall. When you feel anger, pause and observe it. What sparked it? What story am I telling myself about this? When you feel sadness, sit with it. Where in my body do I feel it? What memory or expectation is feeding it? This is not about fixing your emotions. It is about understanding them like an astronomer studying the stars. with curiosity, not condemnation. Journaling becomes a powerful companion on this path. Not the polished journaling of perfect sentences and profound insights, but the raw, honest act of putting your inner landscape onto paper. Write your fears, write your frustrations, write your dreams and your doubts. See them outside of yourself, and in doing so, loosen their invisible hold. A thought written down is a thought made visible, and what is visible can be understood. What is understood can be transformed. Self-awareness also requires a willingness to see uncomfortable truths. It is easy to notice when we are wronged by others, harder to notice when we cling to victimhood, easy to spot injustice done to us, harder to admit when pride blinds us. But deep self-awareness means facing even the parts of ourselves we would rather avoid. Not with harshness, not with shame, but with a quiet, courageous honesty that says, "This too is part of me, and because I see it, I'm no longer bound by it." Seneca taught that no man is more unhappy than he who never faces adversity, for he is not permitted to prove himself. In the same spirit, no one is more lost than the person who never looks within. Without facing the truth of your own mind, you are tossed like a ship without a rudder at the mercy of every storm. But when you know yourself, your strengths, your weaknesses, your tendencies, your triggers, you can steer your life with intention. Self-awareness is not a destination. It is a daily practice, a lifelong conversation with yourself. Some days you will feel clear and strong, understanding your emotions as they rise. Other days you will stumble, act out old patterns, miss the signs. That too is part of the journey. What matters is not perfection, but persistence. Each moment of honest observation, no matter how small, strengthens your capacity to live with intention rather than reaction. In cultivating self-awareness, you also cultivate compassion, first for yourself and then for others. You begin to see that everyone carries their own hidden struggles, their own invisible wars. You become less quick to judge, more quick to understand. And this understanding quietly transforms the way you move through the world. There is a serenity that comes from knowing yourself, a steadiness that no external chaos can easily shake. When you truly see yourself, your light and your shadow, you can no longer be manipulated by praise or destroyed by criticism. You become anchored in something deeper than opinion, deeper than circumstance, anchored in the simple, unshakable truth of who you are. Cultivate deep self-awareness, and you no longer live at the mercy of unseen forces within you. You become the quiet master of your own mind, not by force, but by the patient, courageous act of seeing. 6. Labeling and accepting emotions. You cannot master what you refuse to name. Emotions are like waves. They rise, they peak, they crash, and if you do not know what wave you are riding, you're far more likely to be dragged by it into actions you later regret. To cultivate emotional control, you must first cultivate emotional literacy, the ability to recognize what you feel, to call it by its true name, and to sit with it without panic or judgment. It sounds simple. It is not. Many of us were never taught to name our emotions. We were taught to label anger as wrong, sadness as weakness, fear as failure. We were taught to suppress what was uncomfortable, to dismiss what was inconvenient. But suppression is not control. Denial is not mastery. What we push away grows stronger in the shadows. The Stoics, despite their reputation for emotional restraint, did not advocate for ignoring emotions. They advocated for understanding them. Seneca wrote, No man is more unhappy than he who never faces adversity, for he is not permitted to prove himself. In the same spirit, no man is more vulnerable than he who refuses to face what stirs inside him. True strength lies not in pretending you are unmoved, but in seeing clearly how you are moved and choosing your response from that place of clarity. Labeling emotions is the first act of courage. It requires honesty. It requires vulnerability. It requires you to say without flinching, "This is anger. This is fear. This is grief. This is envy." You do not have to act on it. You do not have to be consumed by it. You simply have to see it. The act of naming an emotion shifts you from being inside the storm to observing the storm. Instead of being overwhelmed by a vague, powerful force, you can step back and say, "I am experiencing frustration right now." This small shift from identification to observation is profound. You are not the emotion. You are the one witnessing it. And witnessing creates space. Space to choose, space to breathe, space to respond with wisdom rather than impulse. Once you have labeled the emotion, the second step is acceptance. Acceptance does not mean resignation. It does not mean you approve of every feeling or that you surrender to being ruled by them. It means acknowledging that what is present, that denying the existence of anger or fear does not erase it. It only gives it more hidden power. Acceptance allows you to work with reality rather than against it. And the reality is, being human means feeling a vast, messy, complicated range of emotions. No one is immune. Not the wise, not the disciplined, not the strong. The difference lies not in the absence of emotion, but in the ability to meet it without being shattered by it. Think of emotions like weather patterns. Some days are sunny, some days are storms. You do not stand outside and scream at the rain, demanding it stop. You accept that it is raining, and you act accordingly, seeking shelter, moving carefully, waiting for the clouds to pass. Emotions are the same. Acceptance allows you to navigate emotional storms with steadiness and grace. Marcus Aurelius often reflected on the nature of life's difficulties, not as injustices, but as facts. You have power over your mind, not outside events, he wrote. To apply this to emotion is to realize, I may not control what I initially feel, but I control what I do with it. And that control begins the moment I recognize and accept what has arisen within me. There is humility in this process. Humility to admit that we are not always rational, not always composed, not always noble. Humility to admit that we are moved by fear, anger, desire, sadness, sometimes all within the same hour. But there is also great dignity in this, because when you accept your emotions without judgment, you reclaim your agency. You are no longer a puppet of denied feelings. You are a conscious participant in your own inner life. Practice labeling your emotions gently. You do not need to dissect them endlessly. A simple acknowledgement is enough. This is anger. This is loneliness. This is hope. Practice accepting them with kindness as you would greet an old friend at the door, not necessarily inviting them to stay forever, but acknowledging their presence with respect. And remember, emotions are temporary visitors. They come and go. They pass through like seasons. Your task is not to freeze them or to fight them. Your task is to recognize them, accept them, and let them move through you without becoming them. In the end, emotional mastery is not about feeling less. It is about feeling wisely. It is about being deeply alive to your inner world without being ruled by it. It is about knowing, I can feel anger without lashing out. I can feel fear without shrinking. I can feel sadness without drowning. Label, accept, breathe, choose. That is the quiet, unglamorous yet powerful path to freedom. 7. Reframing negative thoughts. The stories we tell ourselves shape the lives we live. Often suffering does not come from what happens to us, but from the meaning we assign to it. An insult becomes a declaration of our worthlessness. A failure becomes a prophecy of future defeat. A single moment of rejection becomes in our minds an entire lifetime of inadequacy. This is the silent, relentless work of unexamined negative thoughts, and it is one of the greatest causes of emotional suffering. The Stoics saw this clearly. They taught that events themselves are neutral. It is our judgments that give them color, weight, and emotional charge. As Epictetus said, "It's not what happens to you, but how you react to it that matters." And reaction begins in thought. Before there is anger, fear, despair, there is an interpretation often so automatic we do not even notice it. To reframe negative thoughts is not to deny pain or pretend that everything is fine. It is to see the event clearly, strip away the layers of catastrophic storytelling, and choose a more empowering perspective. It is the discipline of challenging the first thought, the automatic thought, and asking, is this the only way to see this? Is this even true? Imagine a friend cancels plans with you. The unexamined mind leaps immediately. They don't care about me. I'm not important. I'm always left out. But another perspective exists. Maybe they had an emergency. Maybe they're overwhelmed. Maybe this has nothing to do with my value at all. In reframing, you create choice. You reclaim power over your internal landscape. This is not about naive optimism. It is about realistic flexibility, about recognizing that your first emotional reaction is often the loudest, but rarely the wisest. It is about training your mind to question its own impulses, to hold its own narratives up to the light. Start with noticing. When you catch yourself spiraling into negativity, pause. Name the thought clearly. I'm thinking, I'm not good enough because I made a mistake. I'm thinking this failure defines me. Naming it weakens its invisible hold. Thoughts thrive in the dark. They lose their grip when exposed. Then challenge it. Is it objectively true that one mistake defines your worth? That one failure predicts your future? That one rejection determines your entire identity? The Stoics would smile gently here. They would remind us that we're not our circumstances, but how we meet our circumstances. Reframing also invites neutrality. Not everything needs to be labeled good or bad. Sometimes events are simply events, raw material for growth, for practice, for resilience. Marcus Aurelius would often remind himself, this is neither good nor bad. It simply is. This neutrality is powerful. It allows you to meet life with open hands instead of clenched fists. Over time, reframing negative thoughts becomes less about fighting negativity and more about building a new habit of thought. A habit of seeing possibilities where you once saw dead ends. A habit of interpreting setbacks as lessons, not verdicts. A habit of compassion toward yourself when you stumble rather than harsh judgment. This does not mean pain disappears. Life will still wound you at times, but with reframing, wounds become teachers rather than life sentences. Pain becomes something you move through, not something you build your identity around. It takes daily effort. Some days, reframing will feel natural. Other days, the old narratives will pull at you loud and heavy. That is the nature of any deep change. Uneven, imperfect, human. But each time you pause, each time you question, each time you choose a better thought, you are rewiring your mind toward freedom. Reframing is ultimately an act of emotional sovereignty. It is refusing to be at the mercy of the worst interpretations your mind can offer. It is choosing to see yourself, your life, and your challenges through a lens that strengthens you instead of breaking you. Ask yourself often, what else could this mean? What is the most empowering way to see this? What would someone wiser than me see here? In that questioning, you loosen the grip of negativity. You make space for wisdom, for resilience, for peace. You become the author of your inner world rather than a passive character tossed by every passing thought. And that quietly, steadily changes everything. 8. Practicing empathy and compassion for others and yourself. Strength is often mistaken for hardness. We are taught subtly and openly that to be strong is to be unfeeling, to move through the world untouched, to build walls thick enough that nothing can penetrate. But the deepest strength is not found in walls. It is found in openness, in the quiet, resilient courage of empathy and compassion. Empathy is the ability to step outside yourself for a moment and see the world through another's eyes. Compassion is the choice to meet that understanding with kindness, and though they seem directed outward, they begin always within. Practicing empathy for others means recognizing that everyone is fighting battles you cannot see. The anger of a stranger, the coldness of a friend, the betrayal of a loved one. These are rarely pure expressions of malice. More often they are symptoms of wounds, fears, unmet needs. The Stoics urged us not to be quick to anger, not because injustice does not exist, but because anger clouds judgment. Marcus Aurelius reminded himself, whenever you're about to find fault with someone, ask yourself, what fault of mine most nearly resembles the one I'm about to criticize? In seeing the humanity of others, you do not excuse all actions. You do not surrender your boundaries, but you soften the sharpness of judgment that poisons your own peace. You learn to say, this person's action hurt me, but it was born from their own struggle. This comment wounded me, but it speaks more to their pain than my worth. Empathy is not about absorbing the emotions of others. It is about understanding them enough that you do not let them control you. It is about seeing anger without meeting it with anger, seeing fear without responding with fear. It is about holding your own center steady and strong in a world that often spins in chaos. And what of compassion for yourself? In many ways, this is even harder. We are often our own harshest critics, our own most ruthless judges. We forgive others for mistakes we would never allow in ourselves. We offer kindness to friends while condemning ourselves for the same stumbles. Practicing self-compassion means daring to see yourself with the same understanding you extend to others. It means acknowledging your imperfections without letting them define you. It means recognizing that growth is messy, that mistakes are inevitable, that you are at every moment a work in progress, and that this does not diminish your worth. Seneca wrote, "No man becomes great all at once." Growth is a process. Mastery is a journey. And on this journey, there will be days when you lose your temper, when you act from fear, when you fail to live up to your own ideals. Compassion means meeting these moments not with self-loathing, but with curiosity, asking, what can I learn here? How can I move forward a little wiser, a little stronger? Self-compassion is not an excuse to avoid responsibility. True compassion is rooted in accountability. It says, I made a mistake and I own it, but I do not define myself by it. I will learn. I will continue. This mindset transforms failure from a dead end into a doorway. The practice of empathy and compassion for others and for yourself creates a mind that is both sharp and soft. Sharp enough to see clearly, soft enough to respond wisely. It prevents bitterness from taking root. It keeps the heart supple, even when the world gives you every reason to harden it. Empathy teaches you patience with others. Compassion teaches you patience with yourself. Together they build a life of emotional maturity where strength is measured not by how fiercely you can fight, but by how gracefully you can endure, understand, and keep moving forward. Every day offers opportunities to practice. A colleague snaps at you, a stranger cuts you off in traffic, a friend disappoints you, your own mind berates you for a forgotten task. In each moment, you can choose. React blindly or respond compassionately. Harden or stay open. Drown in judgment or rise in understanding. The choice is not always easy, but it is always yours. And every time you choose empathy over anger, compassion over criticism, patience over blame, you become stronger. Not in the brittle way of someone who cannot be touched, but in the profound way of someone who cannot be broken. Practice empathy. Practice compassion for others, for yourself, and watch how quietly, how powerfully your world transforms. 9. Taking full responsibility for your reactions. There is a silent, invisible line between what happens to you and what you choose to do with it. Many never cross it. They spend their lives caught in a loop of blaming circumstances, blaming people, blaming fate, as if their emotions were puppets pulled by someone else's hand. But real freedom, the kind that no one can take from you, begins the moment you accept a simple, unflinching truth. You are responsible for your reactions, not for what happens, not for what others say or do, but for the meaning you give, the thoughts you entertain, the actions you choose. In the teachings of Stoicism, this distinction is sacred. Epictetus made it clear. We are not disturbed by events, but by the views we take of them. Notice carefully, he does not deny that events can be painful. He simply refuses to grant them absolute power over the inner life. Taking full responsibility is not about blame. It is not about beating yourself up every time you feel hurt or angered. It is about stepping into ownership. It is the quiet, powerful act of saying, my peace, my growth, my dignity. These are mine to protect, mine to cultivate. No one else can do it for me. When you refuse responsibility for your reactions, you hand your inner life over to the world. You allow a stranger's rudeness to dictate your mood. You allow a setback to dictate your self-worth. You allow the chaos of life to determine whether you stand tall or collapse. But when you claim responsibility, you reclaim sovereignty. You begin to live from the inside out rather than from the outside in. This shift is neither easy nor instant. It demands brutal honesty. It demands that you stop waiting for apologies that may never come, that you stop waiting for circumstances to improve before you decide to be calm, centered, whole. It demands that you stop measuring your inner state by outer conditions. And it demands, most of all, that you give up the comfort of excuses. There is a certain comfort in blaming others. It absolves us from the hard work of change. It makes the world the villain and us the helpless victims. But comfort is not the same as freedom. True freedom is uncomfortable. It requires the courage to see your own role in your own suffering. It requires the humility to admit, I chose this thought. I fed this emotion. I acted from this impulse. Responsibility does not mean perfection. You will still feel the sting of anger, the pull of sadness, the surge of fear. You are human, but with responsibility. You catch yourself quicker. You step back sooner. You own the process rather than being owned by it. Marcus Aurelius, facing betrayals, wars, and the endless pressures of empire, wrote, "You have power over your mind, not outside events. Realize this, and you will find strength. Strength, real strength, is not found in controlling the uncontrollable. It is found in mastering what is always within your reach, your interpretation, your intention, your response." When you take full responsibility for your reactions, a transformation begins. Criticism no longer destroys you. It informs you. Setbacks no longer define you. They refine you. Other people's behavior no longer dictates your inner weather. You become the steady sky above the passing storms. This does not mean you excuse mistreatment. Boundaries are part of responsibility too. If someone disrespects you, you can and should respond with clarity and firmness. But even then, the energy you bring, the calm or chaos you embody, is your choice. Responsibility is empowerment. It is the quiet armor that protects your peace in a noisy world. It is the invisible compass that keeps you steady when life pulls you in 1,000 directions. And it is not a one-time decision. Every day you are given 100 opportunities to practice when someone cuts you off in traffic, when a friend disappoints you, when your plans fall apart. Each moment asks, will you react blindly or respond consciously? Will you blame or will you own? Over time, these small moments shape your character. They build a foundation of strength that cannot be shaken by the behavior of others or the unpredictability of life. They forge a resilience that is not loud or showy, but quiet, steady, unbreakable. Taking full responsibility for your reactions is not just a skill, it is a way of life. A declaration that you will no longer be at the mercy of forces outside your control. A commitment to live from within, anchored to your own values, guided by your own chosen response. Own your reactions, own your peace, own your life. 10. Releasing the weight, ego, pride, and grudges. There is a heaviness we carry without even knowing. It weighs on the mind, tightens the heart, clouds our judgment, and it is made not of what others have done to us, but of what we refuse to let go, our ego, our pride, our grudges. We often think of strength as holding on, standing our ground, refusing to yield. But sometimes true strength is the quiet decision to set down the weight that no longer serves us. Sometimes it is in the releasing, not the clinging, that we become free. The ego whispers that we must always be right, that any slight is an attack, that any loss of face is an unforgivable humiliation. Pride tells us that forgiveness is weakness, that to move on without revenge is to surrender. Grudges convince us that holding anger close somehow protects us from further pain. But the Stoics, in their wisdom, saw things differently. They understood that clinging to offense, to pride, to the need for vindication, only chains us to the very things we claim to resent. Marcus Aurelius asked himself, will you be angry with the world as if the world would notice? He knew to carry bitterness is to drink poison and hope another will suffer. Releasing ego does not mean thinking less of yourself. It means needing less from the world to confirm your worth. It means standing firmly in who you are without requiring constant validation. When your ego is quiet, you do not crumble at criticism. You do not need to dominate every conversation. You do not fear being wrong because your identity is not built on the fragile pedestal of always being right. Releasing pride does not mean becoming passive. It means choosing dignity over domination. Pride demands that we win. Dignity seeks only that we act with honor. When you let go of pride, You can apologize when needed, forgive when ready, and walk away from conflicts that would otherwise consume your peace. You can disagree without hatred. You can correct without humiliating. You can lead without needing to stand taller than everyone else. Releasing grudges is perhaps the hardest. Grudges feel justified. They feel righteous. They feed the illusion that we are protecting ourselves by remembering every hurt. But in truth, we imprison ourselves in the memory of injury. We give the people who hurt us a rent-free space in our minds, allowing them to wound us again and again long after the moment has passed. Forgiveness, in the Stoic sense, is not about forgetting or excusing harm. It is about refusing to let past harm define your future. It is about choosing to be free even when others have been unjust. Seneca reminds us, the best revenge is not to be like your enemy. You do not heal by mirroring the very pain you received. You heal by breaking the chain, by choosing peace over perpetual conflict. The practice of releasing ego, pride, and grudges is not a single event. It is a discipline, a choice made daily, sometimes hourly. When the sting of criticism rises, you breathe and remember, I am more than this moment. When pride tempts you to dig in your heels, you pause and ask, what matters more, winning or wisdom? When resentment surges, you soften and whisper to yourself, I will not carry this fire any longer. And as you practice, something extraordinary happens. The mind grows lighter. The heart beats quieter. You move through life with less armor, but greater invulnerability. Not because you are untouched, but because you are unhardened. You are not weighed down by every insult, every misunderstanding, every slight. You can walk away when needed. You can forgive without forgetting who you are. Imagine living each day without dragging the chains of past offenses behind you. Imagine meeting challenges without the constant need to defend your ego. Imagine apologizing freely when you are wrong and forgiving swiftly when others stumble. Imagine the space, the clarity, the energy that would flood back into your life. This is not weakness. This is not naivety. This is strength at its most refined. The strength of self-mastery. Release the need to always be right. Release the desire to prove your worth. Release the burden of old anger, and in doing so, reclaim something far more precious than pride, your peace. 11. Setting healthy boundaries and communicating clearly. There is a quiet power in learning where you end and where others begin. In a world that often glorifies self-sacrifice and endless availability, setting boundaries can feel uncomfortable, even selfish. But boundaries are not walls that shut people out. They are the framework that allows real connection, mutual respect, and authentic peace to exist. Healthy boundaries are acts of self-respect. They say, without aggression, this is what I need to stay well. This is what I cannot allow. If I am to live honestly, this is the line that protects my peace, my time, my dignity. Without them, even the most well-meaning relationships eventually sour into resentment and imbalance. The Stoics, though they spoke less explicitly about boundaries, lived by them. Marcus Aurelius knew the importance of guarding his inner life against corruption and distraction. He wrote, "The tranquility that comes when you stop caring what they say or think or do, only what you do." Boundaries are precisely that. The conscious choice to control your own actions regardless of how the world pulls at you. Setting boundaries starts with knowing yourself. You must first be clear. What drains me? What strengthens me? What am I willing to offer freely, and what must I protect? Without this clarity, you will forever be reacting, overcommitting, people-pleasing, burning out before you even realize why. And once you know, the next step is communication. Clear, calm, direct, no justifications, no apologies for taking up space. Setting a boundary is not a confrontation. It is an expression of truth. It might sound like, "I appreciate the invitation, but I need this evening for myself. I'm not available for that request right now. I value our relationship, and for it to stay healthy, I need us to agree on certain expectations." The language of boundaries is simple. The challenge lies not in the words, but in the willingness to say them and to hold them when tested. It will be tested. Some people will not like your boundaries, especially if they benefited from your lack of them. They may guilt you, question you, push against your limits. That is their right. But it is also your right and your responsibility to stand firm without anger, without apology, without drama. Seneca said, "Associate with people who are likely to improve you." Healthy boundaries are how you ensure that your associations uplift you instead of draining you. They are how you protect the sacred space where growth, love, and self-respect can flourish. Clear communication does not mean cruelty. You do not need to be harsh to be firm. In fact, the most powerful boundaries are often spoken with calmness, with kindness. They do not attack, they simply assert. They say, "This is my path. I walk it with openness, but I choose who and what walks alongside me." Practicing boundaries teaches you that peace is not the absence of conflict. It is the presence of clarity. It teaches you that saying no to what harms you is in itself saying yes to what nurtures you. It shifts your relationships from unconscious obligation to conscious connection. But perhaps the most overlooked aspect of boundaries is this. You must honor your own boundaries first. It is not enough to declare them to others if you secretly betray them yourself. If you say you will not answer emails after a certain hour, but you do. If you say you need time for rest, but you let guilt override it. Each self-betrayal erodes your trust in yourself. Each self-betrayal teaches others that your boundaries are suggestions, not commitments. Honor your word to yourself as sacred. Others will learn from your example how to honor it too. Setting healthy boundaries is an act of love, not just for yourself, but for those you interact with. It sets clear expectations. It prevents hidden resentments. It allows for honest connection without the slow poison of unmet, unspoken needs. And it is a continuous practice. There will be times when you are tempted to bend your boundaries to avoid discomfort, to win approval, to sidestep guilt. Resist this. Each time you stand in your truth, even when it trembles, you strengthen your center. You teach yourself that you are worthy of the space you occupy. You affirm again and again that your peace is a priority, not an afterthought. Communicate clearly. Set boundaries calmly. Protect your energy wisely. And watch how your life slowly but surely becomes lighter, cleaner, freer. 12. Managing stress and anxiety through practical tools. Stress and anxiety are not flaws in your character. They are natural responses to the pressures of life, signals from the body and mind that something feels threatened, uncertain, overwhelmed. But while they are natural, they do not have to rule you. Managing stress and anxiety is not about pretending life is easy. It is about building the tools and habits that allow you to move through difficulty with steadiness, clarity, and resilience. The Stoics faced immense uncertainty, wars, exile, betrayal, death. Yet they sought above all to master their internal response to chaos. As Marcus Aurelius wrote, You have power over your mind, not outside events. Realize this, and you will find strength. This realization is the foundation of all practical tools for managing stress. It is not what happens outside you that determines your peace, but what happens inside. The first and simplest tool is the breath. Stress constricts it, speeds it up, shortens it. Anxiety traps it high in the chest. By consciously slowing your breath, deepening it, extending each exhale, you send a signal to your nervous system. I am safe. A simple practice. Inhale for 4 counts. Hold for 4 counts. Exhale for 6 counts. Repeat this rhythm when tension rises, when fear tightens its grip. It is not magic. It is biology. Movement is another tool often overlooked. When the mind is agitated, the body carries that agitation. Energy needs a channel. Walk, stretch, train, move your body to move the stress through and out of you. Even a few minutes of physical movement can transform anxiety from an overwhelming cloud into a manageable signal. Another powerful tool: reframing thoughts. Anxiety often thrives on catastrophic thinking, imagining the worst, replaying failures, magnifying threats. Train yourself to challenge these thoughts. Ask, is this fear true? Is it certain? Is it useful? Most fears collapse under the weight of honest inquiry. Reframing is not denial. It is choosing a perspective that empowers rather than paralyzes. Journaling can also become a sanctuary. When stress swirls in your mind, put it onto paper. Write without editing, without judging. Let the tangled mess of fears and frustrations spill out. Often, what feels overwhelming inside the mind becomes far less monstrous when seen clearly on the page. Journaling gives form to the formless, making it easier to understand, process, and address. And sometimes managing stress means asking for help. The Stoics prized self-reliance, yes, but they also understood the value of community, of shared wisdom. Seneca had friends with whom he exchanged letters of deep philosophical reflection. Marcus Aurelius wrote reminders to himself inspired by the teachings of others. To seek support, a conversation, a mentor, a professional guide, is not weakness. It is wisdom. It is the recognition that while we must walk our path alone, we need not carry every burden in silence. A vital tool often forgotten: simplicity. Anxiety often grows in complexity. Too many obligations, too many tasks, too many competing priorities. Simplify. Identify what matters most today. Focus on that. Let go of the need to solve everything at once. Seneca reminds us, we suffer more often in imagination than in reality. Complexity feeds imagination. Simplicity anchors you in what is real, manageable, actionable. Managing stress also demands acceptance. Accept that some stress is inevitable. Accept that anxiety will visit as weather changes. Fighting stress often amplifies it. Accepting it with a calm, observing mind, here it is again, robs it of much of its destructive power. You become a witness rather than a victim. And above all, remember these tools are practices, not performances. Some days the breath will calm you. Some days the anxiety will surge higher despite your best efforts. This does not mean you are failing. It means you are human. Mastery is not about never feeling stressed. It is about building a deeper resilience, a greater capacity to return to center no matter how far you are pulled away. Build these tools into your daily life. Do not wait for crisis to practice them. Make breathing exercises a morning ritual. Make movement a daily non-negotiable. Make reflection and simplification part of your evening. These small, consistent acts build a foundation that holds you steady when storms come. Managing stress and anxiety is not about eliminating all difficulty. It is about cultivating an inner refuge, a place within you that remains calm even when the world outside is not. You cannot always control the waves, but you can become a better sailor. 13. Embracing imperfection and practicing self-compassion. There is a certain beauty in the cracks, in the unfinished, in the parts of ourselves we would rather hide. Yet for most of us, the natural impulse is to fight imperfection, to correct it, to disguise it, to outrun it. We imagine that somewhere in the future, after enough work, enough achievement, enough self-discipline, we will finally arrive at a version of ourselves that is complete, flawless, beyond mistake. But this vision is a mirage. Perfection is not the destination of growth. It is the enemy of it. Embracing imperfection does not mean giving up on excellence. It means releasing the illusion that you must become flawless before you are worthy of peace, of respect, of self-compassion. It means understanding that flaws are not failures. They are fingerprints of your humanity. The Stoics remind us of this gently but firmly. Marcus Aurelius, who ruled an empire and carried burdens most of us cannot imagine, still wrote in his private meditations about his frustrations, his anger, his impatience. He didn't hide these flaws from himself. He faced them with clarity and patience, knowing that progress was the goal, not perfection. In the same way, practicing self-compassion is not about excusing every mistake. It is about meeting yourself where you are with honesty and kindness. When you stumble, and you will, self-compassion says, "Of course, I stumbled. I am human, but I am not defined by this moment." When you fall short of your ideals, self-compassion says, "I see my gap, and I will keep trying." When you fail, self-compassion whispers, "This is part of the path. I am still on it." Without self-compassion, every mistake becomes a personal indictment. Every imperfection becomes evidence that you are not enough. The mind spirals. Why can't I do better? Why am I like this? Will I ever get it right? And under the weight of this harshness, growth withers. Courage shrinks. The risk of trying again feels too great. But with compassion, mistakes become information, not condemnation. They become teachers rather than executioners. They offer lessons, not life sentences. Seneca wisely said, "While we teach, we learn." In the same way, while we fail, we grow if we are willing to approach ourselves with patience instead of punishment. Self-compassion is a discipline. It is not automatic, especially for those who have spent years believing that harshness is the only path to improvement. It takes conscious effort to notice the voice of self-criticism rising and to choose instead the voice of understanding. You can practice it in small ways. When you forget an appointment, instead of berating yourself, you can say, "I'm managing many things. It's okay to forget sometimes. I will find a better system." When you feel overwhelmed by anxiety, instead of calling yourself weak, you can say, "I'm carrying a lot right now. I will give myself the care I need." When you lose your temper, instead of collapsing into shame, you can say, "That wasn't who I want to be. I see it. I will do better next time." Each of these small acts rewires the mind. They teach you that you are safe to grow, safe to try, safe to stumble without losing your worth. Embracing imperfection also liberates your relationships. When you accept your own humanity, You become more gracious with the humanity of others. You stop expecting flawless behavior. You allow space for mistakes, for misunderstandings, for growth. You meet others not with rigid judgment, but with an open hand. This does not mean abandoning standards. It means rooting those standards in love, not fear. It means understanding that excellence is born not from the fear of failure, but from the freedom to learn, to risk, to fall and rise again. In embracing imperfection, you claim your full, complex, beautiful humanity. You accept that you are and always will be a work in progress. You shift your focus from appearing perfect to becoming whole. And that shift changes everything. It lifts the unbearable burden of having to arrive. It gives you permission to breathe, to try, to grow in the open air of authenticity. The cracks remain, the rough edges stay. But instead of being marks of shame, they become marks of life, of courage, of resilience. Embrace your imperfections. Practice compassion, fierce, steady, unwavering toward yourself, and discover the quiet, unstoppable strength that was never born from being perfect, but from being whole. 14. Developing a growth mindset and emotional balance. To grow is to live. To believe that who you are today is only the beginning of who you can become. This is the foundation of resilience, of mastery, of a life that expands rather than contracts under the weight of hardship. A growth mindset is not just an intellectual idea. It is a way of approaching every challenge, every failure, every victory with the quiet understanding that you are not finished yet, and you never will be. The Stoics understood this intimately. Their philosophy was not about becoming untouchable, but about becoming adaptable. Life, they knew, would not bend to our will. It would break, rebuild, challenge, and surprise us. Wisdom lay not in demanding that life be easy, but in becoming the kind of person who could meet life in all its complexity with steady hands and an open heart. Developing a growth mindset means shifting the way you interpret struggle. It means seeing failure not as evidence of inadequacy, but as proof of effort. It means seeing setbacks not as verdicts, but as invitations. Every obstacle, every difficulty, every uncomfortable moment becomes a question. What is this here to teach me? How can I become stronger through this? Emotional balance grows from the same soil. It is not the absence of feeling. It is the ability to experience the full spectrum of emotion without being overwhelmed or defined by any one part of it. It is the ability to grieve without despair, to feel anger without violence, to feel fear without paralysis. It is the ability to return to center again and again, no matter how often life pulls you off course. Imagine two trees in a storm. One is stiff, rigid, unbending. The wind snaps its branches easily. The other is flexible. It bends, sways, moves with the force of the wind, but does not break. The flexible tree survives because it does not resist reality. It moves with it. This is emotional balance, not the refusal to feel, but the refusal to break. A growth mindset teaches you to expect imperfection, not as an excuse, but as a fact of life. It teaches you to approach your emotions with curiosity rather than fear. When anger rises, you ask, what boundary needs protecting? When sadness visits, you wonder, what loss am I grieving? And how can I honor it without drowning in it? When fear whispers, you say, what risk am I afraid to take? And what does that reveal about what I value? Emotional balance does not mean apathy. It means presence. It means you can stay with yourself through every wave of feeling without needing to suppress, dramatize, or run away. It is the calm acknowledgement, I'm feeling this and I can handle it. Marcus Aurelius, facing betrayals, plagues, and war, reminded himself daily, if you are distressed by anything external, the pain is not due to the thing itself, but to your estimate of it, and this you have the power to revoke at any moment. In those few words lies the heart of emotional balance, the ability to govern your internal world even when the external world is chaotic. To cultivate a growth mindset and emotional balance, you must practice not once, not occasionally, but daily. You must celebrate effort over outcome. You must forgive yourself for mistakes, not as a way of excusing complacency, but as a way of fueling perseverance. You must learn to find value in the attempt, not just in the result. It requires humility, the humility to accept that you will never be a finished product, that there will always be more to learn, more to refine, more to discover within yourself. It also requires courage, the courage to try, to fail, to feel deeply, and to keep moving forward anyway. Growth is messy. Balance is dynamic. Some days you will stumble. Some days you will fall hard. But each time you rise, each time you choose to engage with your life rather than retreat from it, you strengthen the muscles of resilience. Over time, the voice of defeat grows quieter. The fear of imperfection loosens its grip. You stop asking, "Am I good enough?" and start asking, "How can I become better?" You stop fearing failure and start respecting it as a teacher. You stop trying to control life and start learning how to meet it moment by moment with strength and grace. Develop a growth mindset. Cultivate emotional balance, and you will find that life, even in its harshest moments, becomes not something you endure, but something you are continually shaping, continually rising to meet. Mastering your emotions is not about becoming untouchable. It is not about building walls so high that nothing reaches you. It is about standing open and strong at the center of your own being, feeling everything but choosing what you do with what you feel. It is about noticing the first flickers of anger without letting them ignite into fire. It is about hearing the whispers of fear without letting them dictate your path. It is about recognizing sadness, anxiety, pride, and pain, not as enemies to be defeated, but as messengers to be understood. In learning to understand your emotional triggers, to notice your body's signals, to create the sacred pause before reacting, you are reclaiming a freedom that the world will never hand you, a freedom you must build from within. In practicing mindfulness in the ordinary, in cultivating deep self-awareness, in labeling and accepting your emotions, you are learning to live in the present with courage and clarity. You are reframing the thoughts that once imprisoned you. You are practicing empathy both for others and, just as importantly, for yourself. You are stepping into the quiet, profound responsibility of your own reactions. No longer blaming the world for the weather inside your mind. You are releasing the heavy burdens of ego, pride and grudges, those silent thieves of peace. You are setting boundaries with calmness and love, speaking your truth clearly without aggression or apology. You are managing the inevitable tides of stress and anxiety, not by fighting the storms, but by mastering the vessel that sails through them. And above all, you are embracing the beautiful, imperfect, ever-unfolding work of who you are. You are choosing growth over stagnation, resilience over rigidity, presence over panic. This journey is not linear. It is not neat. It is not finished today or tomorrow or even a year from now. It is a lifelong practice, a daily decision to return again and again to the deeper place within you where peace is not given by circumstances, but forged by intention. And so I leave you with this. You do not need to be perfect to be powerful. You do not need to be fearless to be free. You only need to be willing to see, willing to feel, willing to choose better, even if only a little better each day. Master yourself gently, forgive yourself fiercely. Walk steadily, and trust that every small act of inner mastery, every pause, every breath, every act of compassion, every choice to respond instead of react, is building a life of quiet, unshakable strength. Every step matters, every step counts. Stay present, stay grounded, and keep choosing the strength within you. Let's now move further. Most of what stresses you out is not yours to control. It's someone else's opinion, someone else's mistake, something from the past, or something that hasn't even happened yet. But here's the hard truth. The more time you spend worrying about the external, the more power you give it over your internal world. And in the end, it's not the chaos around you that breaks you, it's the chaos inside you that you never learn to calm. Stoicism begins where your illusion ends, and that illusion is control. Not the kind that helps you grow, but the kind that quietly drains your energy while you chase after outcomes you were never meant to hold. The world tells you to fix everything, manage everyone, and stay 5 steps ahead. But no one tells you what to do when life doesn't listen. No one teaches you how to find stillness when everything feels like it's slipping out of your hands. That's where Stoicism comes in. Not as a distant philosophy, but as a way of thinking that brings you back to what's real, what's yours, and what actually matters. This isn't about becoming cold or detached. It's about becoming clear about where your influence ends and where your peace begins. So, if you felt stretched thin, if you've been carrying weight that was never yours to bear, or if you're just ready to stop outsourcing your peace to things you can't control, stay with me, because this isn't just theory. It's a mindset shift that can change how you live, how you respond, and how free you actually feel. Why does it feel like life becomes heavier the more we try to control it? Because the tighter we grip the things we can't hold, people, outcomes, the future, the more they slip through our fingers. And what's left behind isn't peace, it's frustration, exhaustion, that quiet, gnawing feeling that maybe we're not doing enough, not being enough, unless everything unfolds exactly the way we planned. But that feeling doesn't come from life. It comes from the pressure we put on ourselves to shape what was never ours to mold. The truth is, perfection is a moving target. Just when we think we've got things figured out, something changes. A plan falls through, someone disappoints us, life swerves without asking permission, and we're left clinging to a version of control that never really existed in the first place. It's sneaky, this kind of control. It wears the mask of responsibility, of discipline, even of love. But what it really is fear dressed up as strategy. We tell ourselves that worrying is a form of preparation, that anxiety keeps us alert, that planning for every possible outcome is the responsible thing to do. But as Carl Jung once said, what you resist persists. And often, what we're really doing is resisting uncertainty. We fear what we can't predict. We fear being misunderstood, unseen, unloved. And so we grip tighter, thinking maybe, just maybe, if we hold on hard enough, the world will bend to our will. But it doesn't, and it won't. Because life isn't built to be controlled, it's built to be responded to. That's the shift Stoicism invites us into, not to become passive, but to become precise. to stop wasting energy trying to fix what's outside of us and start using that energy to master what's within. Socrates once said, "Know thyself," not control everything around you, know yourself. And that's where the real power is, not in making life go your way, but in knowing who you are when it doesn't. There's a kind of freedom that only shows up when you let go, not in a careless, chaotic way, but in a deliberate, peaceful one. When you stop fighting every current and start learning how to swim with presence. That's not weakness, that's maturity. That's strength. Think about how many hours you've spent trying to predict how someone will react, how much energy you've poured into conversations that only happened in your head, how often you've carried stress that wasn't even yours, someone else's mood, someone else's mistake, someone else's expectations, all of it heavy, all of it draining, and none of it actually under your control. Aristotle believed that excellence is not a one-time act, but a habit. In that spirit, perhaps peace is a habit too, a repeated decision to come back to center again and again, to pause before reacting, to ask, "Is this mine to carry?" before taking on another emotional load. That kind of clarity doesn't come from forcing life to match your expectations. It comes from filtering life through your values. There's a quiet kind of wisdom in choosing not to engage every time your pride is poked. Not every insult deserves your attention. Not every delay requires your frustration. Letting go doesn't mean you don't care. It means you care enough about your energy to protect it. It means you trust that you don't need to control every detail to live a meaningful life. Plato once wrote, "The first and greatest victory is to conquer yourself." That's the heart of it, isn't it? We spend so much time trying to manage people, impressions, outcomes, and all the while, the only battlefield that matters is the one inside. Your thoughts, your reactions, your choices. And yet, self-control is quieter than control of others. It doesn't come with applause. No one cheers when you choose silence instead of argument, or when you decide to walk away from chaos rather than fueling it. But those small decisions, made over and over, create a kind of strength that can't be shaken by the noise of the world. There's a rhythm to peace. It's not frantic, it doesn't rush. It listens before it speaks. It observes before it assumes. It creates space between what happens and how you respond. And in that space, something powerful lives: choice. The freedom to choose how you show up, even when everything around you feels unstable. When we stop trying to control everything, we begin to see clearly what's truly ours: our attitude, our effort, our perspective. These are the tools of the Stoic, not control over the world, but alignment with it. Not resistance to what is, but resilience within it. So maybe the question isn't, how do I control more? But how do I carry less? How do I return to what's mine and let go of what isn't? The next time life pulls you in every direction, when someone disappoints you, when a plan fails, ask yourself, where is my control right now? If it's in your thoughts, your breath, your next step, then that's where your strength is. Let the rest go. You don't have to fix everything. You don't have to hold everything. You only have to stand firmly in the truth of what you can influence and stop letting the rest decide your worth. Because true strength doesn't shout. It breathes. It trusts. It lets go and keeps going. Let's make this simple. Life divides itself into two categories: what you can control and what you absolutely cannot. And if we're being honest, that list of things you can't control is much longer than the one you can. You can't control the weather, the past, or how someone else chooses to speak to you. You can't control how people interpret your words, how they carry their own pain, or the choices they make when you're not looking. But you can control your own thoughts, your choices, your response. That's your domain. That's where your influence begins and ends. And yet, most of us live backwards. We spend our days trying to manipulate the uncontrollable and overlook the very thing that shapes our experience from the inside out, our own mind. Marcus Aurelius once wrote, "You have power over your mind, not outside events." Realize this, and you will find strength. And there's a kind of radical peace that comes with that realization, because it means that even when the world is loud, you don't have to be. Even when things fall apart, you don't have to fall with them. But that kind of control isn't loud or dramatic. It's quiet, subtle, internal. And it begins in the space between stimulus and response. Someone insults you. Your pride flares up, your ego stiffens, and your first instinct is to bite back, to say something clever, cutting, to remind them you're not the one to mess with. But if you pause, even for a second, something powerful happens. You start to see clearly. Their tone, not yours. Their pain masquerading as disrespect, also not yours. The only thing that belongs to you in that moment is your reaction. And when you recognize that, you take your power back, not by dominating the moment, but by refusing to be dominated by it. Socrates believed that self-knowledge was the foundation of all wisdom. Know thyself, he said, again and again. But knowing yourself isn't just about understanding your strengths or passions. It's about understanding what is truly under your control. It's about recognizing that you don't need to attend every argument you're invited to, that your value isn't determined by someone else's inability to see it, that the world might be on fire outside your window, but if your inner world stays grounded, you haven't lost. Still, this mindset doesn't come naturally. From a young age, we're taught to focus outward, be likable, get approval, win, fix, predict, prevent. But what no one teaches us is how to filter that chaos through something steady, our own clarity. We grow up thinking that if we just try hard enough, we can change how people see us. We think if we say the right thing, we can heal someone else's wounds. If we anticipate enough outcomes, we can avoid pain altogether. But that's not clarity, that's control dressed as fear, and it's exhausting. Carl Jung once said, "Until you make the unconscious conscious, it will direct your life and you will call it fate." And most people are living exactly like that, ruled not by what's happening, but by how they interpret what's happening. That's why two people can go through the same event and walk away with completely different experiences. One is destroyed, the other is defined. Not because the situation was different, but because their mindset was. So what would it look like to flip the script? To stop trying to manage the uncontrollable and instead master what's always been yours? It would look like presence. Like choosing to breathe when everything in you wants to react, like observing your emotions instead of being swept away by them, like noticing your thoughts without letting them boss you around. It would look like restraint, not because you're suppressing, but because you're directing. It would look like intentional action instead of impulsive reaction. And maybe, most of all, it would feel like freedom. Not the loud kind that comes with control over others, but the steady kind that comes with control over yourself. Aristotle taught that the ultimate human good is to live in accordance with reason. And when you really understand that, you start to realize that so many of our struggles aren't about what happens. They're about what we believe about what happens. They're about the stories we tell ourselves. They disrespected me, so I must fight back. That didn't go my way, so I must have failed. But those are just narratives. And when you learn to challenge them, to interrogate them, you start living with reason instead of reactivity. You start choosing your responses instead of being owned by your instincts. None of this means life becomes easy. People will still push your buttons, plans will still collapse, emotions will still rise, but you'll meet those moments differently, not with control over the situation, but with clarity within it. And that clarity is a kind of armor, not the kind that hardens you, but the kind that protects what matters most: your peace, your integrity, your direction. Plato believed that the measure of a person wasn't in how they spoke, but in how they lived. And how you live comes down to how you choose, moment by moment, day by day. So choose well, choose where to place your attention, choose what's worthy of your energy, choose what's yours to influence and release what isn't. Because you don't have to control the noise around you to create stillness within you. You only have to stop giving your power away to things that were never yours to hold. And the moment you do that, quietly, steadily, you step into something rare. You stop being at the mercy of life, and you start meeting life on your own terms. Ever finish a day mentally exhausted, even though on the surface nothing big happened? You didn't run a marathon, you didn't face a crisis, and yet you feel drained, like you've been holding your breath all day. That kind of tired isn't physical, it's mental, emotional, and more often than not, it comes from carrying things that don't actually belong to you. A quiet look from someone that you overanalyzed, a pause in a text conversation that you filled with imagined meanings, a situation that wasn't yours but somehow became your responsibility simply because you couldn't let it go. You walked through your day holding 100 invisible threads, each one tugging at your peace, without ever asking, "Is this mine to carry?" The truth is, we live in our heads far more than we live in the moment. We rehearse arguments that never happen. We craft responses to things no one said. We try to calculate the emotional weather of someone else's mood, as if their silence is a puzzle we're required to solve. Carl Jung once said, "People will do anything, no matter how absurd, to avoid facing their own soul." Sometimes the things we obsess over externally are just clever ways of avoiding what's unresolved within. We busy ourselves with the impossible, changing someone's opinion, rewriting the past, controlling the future, because those distractions, as painful as they are, feel easier than sitting still with uncertainty. But not all attention is helpful. Attention is energy, and energy is limited. You only get so much of it each day, and when you spend it on things you can't control, you starve what actually matters. That's where the Stoics were uncompromising. They believed your attention is sacred. Marcus Aurelius wrote, "The things you think about determine the quality of your mind." Let that sink in. Your focus isn't neutral. It shapes the kind of person you're becoming. The more you feed anxiety, resentment, or imaginary futures, the more those things take root in your inner world. Reclaiming your peace, then, isn't about doing more. It's about feeding less of what drains you. We often confuse reacting with responsibility. Someone says something rude, and we feel the urge to respond. A moment feels off, and we jump into fix-it mode. But not everything requires your reaction. You are not obligated to hold every emotion that passes through. Not everything that hurts you deserves a reply. Emotional maturity isn't about suppressing feelings. It's about choosing what to engage with and what to let pass. Because when you stop trying to control the tide, you finally learn how to swim. You begin to move with the current instead of fighting it. You begin to respond with intention instead of being pulled by every emotional wave. The exhaustion starts to lift, not because life got easier, but because you stop trying to carry all of it at once. The weight of worry lightens when you realize that most of it was built on assumptions, on imagined futures, on trying to answer questions that aren't yours to answer. And once that mental noise starts to quiet down, clarity returns. You begin to see what is actually happening instead of what your fear or your ego wants to project. Socrates taught that the unexamined life is not worth living, but maybe an over-examined one, where every silence is suspicious, every change is threatening, every glance is dissected, isn't peaceful either. There's a balance to be found, a middle path between awareness and overthinking. You're allowed to let some things be unclear. You're allowed to not have the last word. You're allowed to say, "This is not mine," and walk away. And every time you do, you make space for something better. Space to rest, space to breathe, space to focus on what is yours, your thoughts, your effort, your boundaries, your peace. Energy, once reclaimed, changes everything. Conversations become lighter because you're not secretly trying to prove something. Decisions become easier because they're not tangled up in someone else's expectations. Even stillness becomes productive because you're no longer measuring your worth by how much you're fixing. That's the shift, when your value stops being tied to what you control and starts being grounded in how you respond to what you can't. Aristotle said, "Knowing yourself is the beginning of all wisdom." And part of knowing yourself is knowing where your lines are. Knowing when you're leaking energy, not because of what's happening, but because of where you've placed your attention. If your peace is constantly at the mercy of someone else's tone, then your power is in the wrong place. But if you can return to your center, even when things around you are loud, uncertain, or unfair, then you found something rare. You found the kind of peace that doesn't ask the world to behave, the kind that isn't reactive, the kind that doesn't need permission to exist. So the next time you feel drained by the end of a quiet day, pause. Don't rush to fill the silence. Ask yourself gently, what did I carry today that wasn't mine? What conversation, fear or fantasy did I hand my energy to? And what can I release? Not tomorrow, not later, but right now. Because the peace you're searching for isn't hiding in a perfect outcome. It's right here, underneath all the things you've been trying to hold. And the moment you stop gripping what you can't shape, you realize you were never powerless, you were just distracted. Most people hear the word acceptance and immediately assume it means surrendering, giving up, waving the white flag to life and letting it roll over you. But that's not what acceptance is, not even close. Acceptance isn't weakness, it's clarity. It's the ability to see things as they actually are, not as you wish they were, or as they used to be, or as someone told you they should be. It's the moment you stop editing the story to make yourself more comfortable and start reading it for what it truly says. Acceptance is when you finally look something square in the eye and say, "This happened. This is gone. This is real." There's no spin, no bargaining, no fantasy. That doesn't mean you like it. It doesn't mean you wanted it. And it certainly doesn't mean it doesn't hurt. What it means is that you've decided to stop fighting what already is, because that's where most of our pain hides, in the struggle between what's true and what we think should be true. We convince ourselves that if we resist hard enough, maybe reality will budge. Maybe people will become who we need them to be. Maybe the past will undo itself. But it doesn't. And while we wait, we waste time, we bleed energy. We think acceptance will trap us, when in fact it's the only way out. Because you can't change what you won't face. You can't fix what you refuse to admit is broken. You can't grow past a version of yourself you're still busy justifying. So when you finally accept something fully, without conditions, that's when everything begins to shift. You move from being stuck to being free, from resisting to responding, from hiding to healing. And it's not instant, it's not easy, but it is real. And real change only happens in the present, not in the imaginary world where things turned out differently, but in the world that actually is. Aristotle said, "It is the mark of an educated mind to be able to entertain a thought without accepting it." The same can be said of emotions and experiences. Acceptance doesn't mean you approve of what happened. It doesn't mean you pretend it was okay. It means you allow it to be what it is, without denial, without dramatizing, without dressing it up. That space between the facts and the stories we add to those facts, that's where suffering often hides. And acceptance clears that space. It strips things down, not to make life colder, but to make it clearer. Because clarity is strength. There's a kind of relief in finally saying, this is who they are. Not who you hoped they'd become, not who they promised they were, but who they actually showed up as, consistently, clearly. And once you accept that, you stop arguing with their reality. You stop rewriting your past to justify your attachment. You stop trying to force love out of someone who never knew how to offer it. And that's powerful, not because it erases the pain, but because it returns you to yourself. It puts you back in motion. Plato taught that truth is the beginning of every good, and truth begins with acceptance, the truth of a lost relationship, the truth of a closed door, the truth of your own flaws, your own limits, your own capacity to grow. We spend so much energy trying to keep certain truths out of view, hoping that if we don't name them, they won't hurt us. But it's not the truth that hurts. It's the fear of looking at it. Once you do, you realize it's not a wall, it's a mirror. And when you face that mirror honestly, something shifts. You're no longer just reacting to the world, you're responding to it from a place of grounded understanding. Acceptance also demands a different kind of bravery, not the loud kind that charges into battle, but the quiet kind that sits with discomfort without needing to escape it. Socrates believed that self-examination was the foundation of a meaningful life. And accepting what we find in that examination, even the parts we don't like, is where that meaning begins. That's when you start asking real questions. What now? Who do I want to become now that I've stopped pretending everything's fine? How do I build from here? Because that's the beauty of acceptance. It doesn't leave you empty. It makes space, space to rebuild, to create new meaning, to decide what matters going forward. When you're no longer tangled in fantasies or weighed down by denial, you can finally see the road ahead. Maybe it's uncertain, maybe it's difficult, but at least it's real. And real life is where all growth begins. There's nothing passive about facing what hurts you. There's nothing weak about acknowledging that something is over. In fact, that's where the strongest version of you is born. The one that doesn't need to control everything, doesn't hide from reality, doesn't collapse under the weight of disappointment. The one who stands up, looks around, and says, "This is where I am, and I'm ready to begin again." So no, acceptance isn't giving up. It's waking up. It's the decision to stop wasting your strength on fighting what is, and to start using that strength to shape what can be. And when you make that shift, when you stop resisting and start responding with clarity and intention, you become something unshakable, not because life got easier, but because you finally decided to meet it where it really lives, in the present, in the truth, in acceptance. Every moment, whether we notice it or not, offers us a choice, a subtle, invisible fork in the road. We can react or we can respond. And while both roads are always available, they lead to very different places. Reaction is fast. It's charged with emotion. It comes from the gut, from memory, from pride. It often feels satisfying in the heat of the moment. A comeback, a slammed door, a sharp message sent too quickly. But that satisfaction is short-lived. What follows is usually regret, confusion, or the kind of silence that lingers a little too long. On the other hand, response is slower. It's not passive, it's intentional. It carries restraint, not because you're holding back, but because you're choosing forward. It's what happens when you create space between what you feel and what you do. That space is where everything changes. When someone speaks to you with disrespect, it's easy to absorb their tone and fire it back. But if you observe instead, if you ask yourself, is this about me or about something they haven't resolved? You begin to see the situation more clearly. You stop making it personal. You stop turning someone else's mood into your burden. That's not weakness. That's wisdom. And the more you practice this, the more natural it becomes. You build a kind of inner pause button, and every time you press it, you reclaim your authority. Carl Jung said, "Between stimulus and response, there is a space. In that space is our power to choose our response. In our response lies our growth and our freedom." Most people never find that space. They live in reaction, habitual, automatic, unconscious. It's not because they're bad, it's because they've never been taught that there's another way. But once you become aware of that gap between what happens and how you act, everything slows down just enough to allow for choice. And with that choice, you become someone different, someone deliberate, someone who doesn't get pulled into every drama or every mood swing around them. This doesn't mean you never feel angry, sad, frustrated, or confused. It means you don't let those feelings run your life. Socrates once said, "No man has the right to be an amateur in the matter of physical training. But it is a shame for a man to grow old without seeing the beauty and strength of which his body is capable." Replace body with mind, and the same truth applies. If we never train our emotional responses, we never see the strength and clarity we're truly capable of. The discipline of response is a kind of inner fitness, one that keeps you steady when life feels chaotic. When plans fall apart, the mind naturally wants to spiral. It starts building worst-case scenarios, attaching meaning where there's none, blaming others or blaming yourself. But spiraling doesn't solve anything. What it does is create more chaos internally than what you are already dealing with externally. Response doesn't ignore the disappointment. It just redirects your energy. Instead of spiraling, you adapt. You take a breath. You look at what's still within reach, and you decide, what's the next right step from here? This isn't about controlling the world. That's the illusion most people fall for, that if they just try hard enough, they can manage everything outside of them. But real power doesn't come from managing people, events, or timing. It comes from managing yourself, from becoming the kind of person who doesn't need everything to go right in order to stay aligned. Plato taught that the measure of a man is what he does with power, and the highest form of power isn't over others. It's over how you show up, even when things fall apart. That's the shift. You stop trying to make everything around you cooperate, and you start leading yourself. You lead your thoughts. You lead your emotions. You lead your reactions. It doesn't mean you're perfect. It means you're present. And that presence becomes your power. The world may still throw the same storms at you, but you won't be the same person who used to panic when they hit. You'll have trained for it, not through avoidance, but through awareness. Aristotle believed that excellence was not a one-time act, but a habit. In the same way, emotional strength is built in the small, repeated moments where you choose response over reaction. When you walk away instead of escalating, when you breathe instead of biting back, when you give yourself time to think before you speak. Those moments don't just protect your peace, they define your character. They show you that calm isn't just something you stumble into, it's something you build. And once you've built it, something incredible happens. Even chaos becomes a classroom. You stop seeing conflict as something to fear. You stop seeing change as something to dread. You start learning from discomfort instead of running from it. That's the real reward. Not just that you feel more in control, but that you become someone who doesn't need control to feel grounded. So the next time you feel the urge to react, pause. Notice it, sit with it, and remind yourself that in this moment, right now, you have a choice. Not over what happened, but over what happens next. That choice is yours. And the more often you choose with clarity, the less life can shake you. Because peace isn't about perfect conditions, it's about mastering your response when conditions are far from perfect. That's the strength Stoicism points us toward, not control over life, but control over how you live it. You don't need to control every moment to find peace. You just need to control how you meet it. To wrap it up, there is only one way to happiness, and that is to cease worrying about the things which are beyond the power of our will. If you were distressed by anything external, the pain is not due to the thing itself, but to your estimate of it, and this you have the power to revoke at any moment. The greatest obstacle to living is expectancy, which hangs upon tomorrow and loses today. You are arranging what lies in fortune's control and abandoning what lies in yours. What are you looking at? To what goal are you straining? The whole future lies in uncertainty. Live immediately. Men are disturbed not by things, but by the views which they take of things. Thus, death is nothing terrible, else it would have appeared so to Socrates. But the terror consists in our notion of death, that it is terrible. When therefore we are hindered or disturbed or grieved, let us never impute it to others, but to ourselves. That is, to our own views. It is the action of an uninstructed person to reproach others for his own misfortunes, of one entering upon instruction to reproach himself, and of one perfectly instructed to reproach neither others nor himself. They lose the day in expectation of the night, and the night in fear of the dawn. He is a wise man who does not grieve for the things which he has not, but rejoices for those which he has. Live a good life. If there are gods and they are just, then they will not care how devout you have been, but will welcome you based on the virtues you have lived by. If there are gods but unjust, then you should not want to worship them. If there are no gods, then you will be gone, but will have lived a noble life that will live on in the memories of your loved ones. If you really want to escape the things that harass you, what you're needing is not to be in a different place, but to be a different person. True happiness is to enjoy the present without anxious dependence upon the future, not to amuse ourselves with either hopes or fears, but to rest satisfied with what we have, which is sufficient, for he that is so wants nothing. The greatest blessings of mankind are within us and within our reach. A wise man is content with his lot, whatever it may be, without wishing for what he has not. For what prevents us from saying that the happy life is to have a mind that is free, lofty, fearless, and steadfast? A mind that is placed beyond the reach of fear, beyond the reach of desire, that counts virtue the only good, baseness the only evil, and all else but a worthless mass of things which come and go without increasing or diminishing the highest good, and neither subtracting any part from the happy life, nor adding any part to it. A man thus grounded must, whether he wills or not, necessarily be attended by constant cheerfulness and a joy that is deep and issues from deep within, since he finds delight in his own resources and desires no joys greater than his inner joys. When someone wrongs you, ask yourself what made him do it. Once you understand his concept of good and evil, you feel sorry for him and cease to either be amazed or angry. If his concept is similar to yours, then you will be bound to forgive him, since you would have acted as he did in similar circumstances. But if you do not share his ideas of good and evil, then you should find it easier to overlook the wrongs of someone who is confused and in a moral muddle. Wealth consists not in having great possessions, but in having few wants. Don't explain your philosophy, embody it. First say to yourself what you would be, and then do what you have to do. Any person capable of angering you becomes your master. He can anger you only when you permit yourself to be disturbed by him. Circumstances don't make the man, they only reveal him to himself. Don't seek to have events happen as you wish, but wish them to happen as they do happen, and all will be well with you. God has entrusted me with myself. No man is free who is not master of himself. A man should live so that his happiness shall depend as little as possible on external things. Know you not that a good man does nothing for appearance sake, but for the sake of having done right? If you live in harmony with nature, you will never be poor. If you live according to what others think, you will never be rich. All cruelty springs from weakness. Nothing, to my way of thinking, is a better proof of a well-ordered mind than a man's ability to stop just where he is and pass some time in his own company. A gift consists not in what is done or given, but in the intention of the giver or doer. You act like mortals in all that you fear, and like immortals in all that you desire. If a man knows not to which port he sails, no wind is favorable. You live as if you were destined to live forever. No thought of your frailty ever enters your head. Of how much time has already gone by, you take no heed. You squander time as if you drew from a full and abundant supply, though all the while that day which you bestow on some person or thing is perhaps your last. The soul becomes dyed with the color of its thoughts. How much time he gains who does not look to see what his neighbor says or does, but only at what he does himself, to make it just and holy. Begin each day by telling yourself, I shall be met with interference, ingratitude, insolence, disloyalty, ill will, and selfishness, all of them due to the offender's ignorance of what is good or evil. But for my part, I have long perceived the nature of good and its nobility, the nature of evil and its meanness, and also the nature of the culprit himself, who is my brother, not in the physical sense, but as a fellow creature, similarly endowed with reason and a share of the divine. Therefore, none of those things can injure me, for nobody can implicate me in what is degrading. Neither can I be angry with my brother or fall foul of him, for he and I were born to work together like a man's 2 hands, feet, or eyelids, or the upper and lower rows of his teeth. To obstruct each other is against nature's law, and what is irritation or aversion but a form of obstruction? If anyone tells you that a certain person speaks ill of you, do not make excuses about what is said of you, but answer, "He was ignorant of my other faults, else he would not have mentioned these alone." On acceptance and change. It seems to often do more harm than good to live in resentment and disdain for the world around us. The world we find ourselves in, its past and present, its people and the rise and fall of its cultures and practices are all the way they are. They are not the way we personally want them to be. When we resist the reality of the world around us and instead project onto it our expectation about how the world should be, we are often met with a certain level of internal resistance that can cause us to suffer, and the greater the distance between reality and our expectation, the greater the resistance. The world is what it is. It is not what we expect it to be. Learn to accept life. Learn to love fate and all that it brings. This is the Stoic principle of amor fati, to love fate. After all, fate has given us the ability to live and to experience life. Unfortunately, amor fati often gets confused with a passive, defeatist acceptance of the world around us. To accept the wrongs of the world and to lie down as we observe the passing of things we don't agree with or the wrongdoing we see being committed. But I believe this is a misunderstanding of the Stoic principle. Acceptance of reality does not mean to submit to it. It is simply learning the ability to see it objectively and accepting that in this moment, that is the state of the world. It is the ability to look at the things around us clearly, not through the lens of our own bias and expectations. In doing so, we are better able to understand the situations around us, the reality of the situations we find ourselves in. Unblinded by the lens of our own bias and expectations, we then are able to more clearly understand what is within our control and what is not, and then look to leverage that control to effect change. First in ourselves, and then, if possible, in the world around us, for the better. Whenever you feel anger towards a person, think of what led them to behave in such a way. It is all too easy for us to pass judgment from our own perspective, but it is a very different thing to try and put yourself in the shoes of the wrongdoer and try to understand what hardship they have gone through, what burden they might carry, or how life has treated them leading up to the moment which you found so offensive. Most people are trying to do the best they can with what they have, and while we all are responsible for our actions, there is often a line to draw between a person's experience and their behavior. On comfort and hardship. To me, one of the great ironies of life is a man's desire to find comfort, to remove all sources of hardship and suffering in favor of comfort. When applied to our core needs like food, shelter, security, and companionship, comfort and stability, to me, do make sense. But when it exceeds to every corner of our lives, comfort and the removal of all hardship seems to me to bring with it its own brand of hardship. Instead of putting ourselves into the unknown, expanding our comfort zone, and learning to deal with the adversity that comes with it, excessive comfort seems to risk the opposite. It erodes our resilience to hardship, can breed purposelessness, apathy, sloth, and the host of limitations that come with a shrinking comfort circle. It seems to me that one of the lesser thought of challenges of modern life is to balance the comfort that comes when our base needs are met with the voluntary hardship that is needed to make sure that comfort doesn't soften our resolve. The ancient Stoics advocated voluntary hardship. Marcus Aurelius chose to sleep on an uncomfortable bed. Seneca chose to swim in rivers in the dead of winter. Both men were all too aware of the risks of becoming too comfortable and the benefits of adding discomfort to one's life. On death and time. Day to day, we often distance ourselves from death, often thinking that it is something that happens to others or to us many, many years from now. But the truth is that death is at our shoulder every day, an ever-present fact of life. Today may very well be your last. Living with this as a reminder brings with it a deep gratitude for many of the things we take for granted, knowing that whatever it is may be one of the last few times we are able to experience it, whether that be the sound of leaves in the wind, the company of those we love, or simply the taste of good food. To the Stoics, this was the practice of memento mori, the practice of remembering death. The nature of life is change. From the very first shifts of the universe, the most simple of elements gathered together to produce clouds and then solid bodies. Bodies that began to form the very first ingredients for life. Those ingredients formed life, the circle of birth and death, until eventually they came together in the exact configuration needed to create you and me. Like the beginning, the peak, and the crashing end of a wave, our lives are simply part of a grander cycle. We are formed, we experience, and we end. And with our end comes the opportunity for the reconfiguration of our atoms to allow another to come and go, and to enjoy the experience of life, and so on forever. The nature of the entire universe is change, from the very big to the very small. On habits and daily life. Lives are often not made better in the accomplishments of lofty goals or the collection of expensive things, so much as they are improved by the small day-to-day changes of one's habits. The decisions to wake up a little earlier, get out of the house a little more often, go for a run, read that book that's been gathering dust, or try to be more present in the company of the things and people we love. While, of course, great achievements do contribute to it, habits built over time, not short bursts of joy, are often the paving stones to a happier life. There is a delicate balance to be had when looking to the future and the past. The future is necessary for long-term planning and preparation for events that seem likely to happen. However, look too long towards the horizon, and it's easy to let life slip by and miss the very thing you spent all that time planning and preparing for. Similarly, the past can be used as a tool to learn, but looking back to what was may also mean that you miss the life into which you've taken all the lessons of the past. The future can be used to plan and prepare, the past can be used to learn, but life only happens in the present. When I meet death, as we all must do, the time and place will be largely outside of my control. If tomorrow, then I will die tomorrow, and if a year from now or 20 years from now, then I will meet it then. It is in the very nature of a living thing to die, regardless of how much we resist it. However, for now I am alive, so I will put to use what is within my control and decide what to do with the time that is given to me. On grief and misfortune. I am not soothing you or making light of your misfortune. If fate can be overcome by tears, let us bring tears to bear upon it. Let every day be passed in mourning, every night be spent in sorrow instead of sleep. Let your breast be torn by your own hands, your very face attacked by them, and every kind of cruelty be practiced by your grief, if it will profit you. But if the dead cannot be brought back to life, however much we may beat our breasts, if destiny remains fixed and immovable forever, not to be changed by any sorrow however great, and death does not lose his hold on anything that he has once taken away, then let our futile grief be brought to an end. Let us then steer our own course, and no longer allow ourselves to be driven to leeward by the force of our misfortune. He is a sorry pilot who lets the waves wring his rudder from his grasp, who leaves the sails to fly loose and abandons the ship to the storm. But he who boldly grasps the helm and clings to it until the sea closes over him deserves praise, even though he be shipwrecked. Never let the future disturb you. You will meet it, if you have to, with the same weapons of reason which today arm you against the present. There are misfortunes which strike the sage without incapacitating him, of course, such as physical pain, infirmity, the loss of friends or children, or the catastrophes of his country when it is devastated by war. I grant that he is sensitive to these things, for we do not impute to him the hardness of rock or of iron. There is no virtue in putting up with that which one does not feel, on wisdom and folly. And they say that there is this difference between the mind of a foolish man and that of a wise man, that the foolish man thinks that such visions are in fact as dreadful and terrifying as they appear, with the original impact of them on his mind, and by his assent he approves of such ideas as if they were rightly to be feared, and confirms them. But the wise man, after being affected for a short time and slightly in his colour and expression, does not assent, but retains the steadfastness and strength of the opinion which he has always had about visions of this kind, namely, that they are in no wise to be feared, but excite terror by a false appearance and vain alarms. Don't you know? Life is like a military campaign. One must serve on watch, another in reconnaissance, another on the front line. So it is for us. Each person's life is a kind of battle, and a long and varied one too. You must keep watch like a soldier, and do everything commanded. You have been stationed in a key post, not some lowly place, and not for a short time, but for life. Core principles. Seek not for events to happen as you wish, but wish events to happen as they do, and your life will go smoothly. The chief task in life is simply this: to identify and separate matters so that I can say clearly to myself which are externals not under my control, and which have to do with the choices I actually control. Where then do I look for good and evil? Not to uncontrollable externals, but within myself to the choices that are my own. One ought to seek out virtue for its own sake, without being influenced by fear or hope, or by any external influence. Moreover, that in that does happiness consist. What is your art? To be good. And how is this accomplished? Well, except by general principles, some about the nature of the universe, and others about the proper constitution of man. In our control is the most beautiful and important thing, the thing because of which even the God himself is happy, namely, the proper use of our impressions. We must concern ourselves absolutely with the things that are under our control, and entrust the things not in our control to the universe. Men are disturbed not by things, but by the principles and notions which they form concerning things. It is the act of an ill-instructed man to blame others for his own bad condition. It is the act of one who has begun to be instructed to lay the blame on himself, and of one whose instruction is completed, neither to blame another nor himself, on self-knowledge. One who knows not who he is, and to what end he was born, what kind of world is this, and with whom he is associated therein. One who cannot distinguish good and evil, beauty and ugliness, truth and falsehood, will never follow reason in shaping his desires and impulses and repulsions, nor yet in assent, denial, or suspension of judgment, but will in one word go about deaf and blind, thinking himself to be somewhat when he is in truth of no account. Is there anything new in all this? Is not this ignorance the cause of all the mistakes and mischances of men since the human race began? We are all chained to fortune. The chain of one is made of gold and wide, while that of another is short and rusty. But what difference does it make? The same prison surrounds all of us, and even those who have bound others are bound themselves, unless perchance you think that a chain on the left side is lighter. Honours bind one man, wealth another. Nobility oppresses some, humility others. Some are held in subjection by an external power, while others obey the tyrant within. Banishments keep some in one place, the priesthood others. All life is slavery. Therefore each one must accustom himself to his own condition and complain about it as little as possible, and lay hold to whatever good is to be found near him. Nothing is so bitter that a calm mind cannot find comfort in it. Small tablets, because of the writer's skill, have often served for many purposes, and a clever arrangement has often made a very narrow piece of land habitable. Apply reason to difficulties. Harsh circumstances can be softened, narrow limits can be widened, and burdensome things can be made to press less severely on those who bear them cleverly. If you were distressed by anything external, the pain is not due to the thing itself, but to your estimate of it, and this you have the power to revoke at any moment. On character and virtue. These reasonings are unconnected. I am richer than you, therefore I am better. I am more eloquent than you, therefore I am better. The connection is rather this. I am richer than you, therefore my property is greater than yours. I am more eloquent than you, therefore my style is better than yours. But you, after all, are neither property nor style. If you have given way to anger, be sure that over and above the evil involved therein, you have strengthened the habit and added fuel to the fire. If overcome by a temptation of the flesh, do not reckon it a single defeat, but that you have also strengthened your dissolute habits. Habits and faculties are necessarily affected by the corresponding acts. One who has had fever, even when it has left him, is not in the same condition of health as before, unless indeed his cure is complete. Something of the same sort is true also of diseases of the mind. Behind, there remains a legacy of traces and of blisters, and unless these are effectually erased, subsequent blows on the same spot will produce no longer mere blisters, but sores. If you do not wish to be prone to anger, do not feed the habit. Give it nothing which may tend to its increase. At first, keep quiet, and count the days when you were not angry. I used to be angry every day, then every other day, next every 2, next every 3 days. And if you succeed in passing 30 days, sacrifice to the gods in thanksgiving, on work and purpose. When you have trouble getting out of bed, tell yourself, I have to go to work, as a human being. What do I have to complain of if I'm going to do what I was born for, the things I was brought into the world to do? Or is this what I was created for, to huddle under the blankets and stay warm? Until we have begun to go without them, we fail to realize how unnecessary many things are. We've been using them not because we needed them, but because we had them. If you seek tranquility, do less, or more accurately, do what's essential, what the logos of a social being requires, and in the requisite way, which brings a double satisfaction, to do less, better, because most of what we say and do is not essential. If you can eliminate it, you'll have more time and more tranquility. Ask yourself at every moment, is this necessary? Riches are a cause of evil, not because of themselves they do any evil, but because they goad men on so that they are ready to do evil. In general, any method of discipline applied to the body which tends to modify its desires or emotions are good for ascetic ends, but if done for display, they betray at once a man who keeps an eye on outward show, who has an ulterior purpose, and is looking for spectators to shout, "Oh, what a great man!" This is why Apollonius so well said, "If you are bent upon a little private discipline, wait till you are choking with heat one day, then take a mouthful of cold water and spit it out again, and tell no man." What is not good for the beehive cannot be good for the bees. A commitment to justice in your own acts, which means thought and action resulting in the common good, what you were born to do, on life and death. Men do not care how nobly they live, but only how long, although it is within the reach of every man to live nobly, but within no man's power to live long. He who is running a race ought to endeavour and strive to the utmost of his ability to come off victor, but it is utterly wrong for him to trip up his competitor or to push him aside. So in life it is not unfair for one to seek for himself what may accrue to his benefit, but it is not right to take it from another. For mankind, evil is injustice and cruelty and indifference to a neighbour's trouble, while virtue is brotherly love and goodness and justice and beneficence and concern for the welfare of your neighbour. The courageous, in exile or at home, is fearless in the face of all such threats. For that reason, they've the courage to say what they think, equally at home or in exile. On philosophy and practice. Philosophy does not promise to secure anything external for a man, otherwise it would be admitting something that lies beyond its proper subject matter. For as the material of the carpenter is wood, and that of statuary bronze, so the subject matter of the art of living is each person's own life. My advice is really this. What we hear the philosophers saying, and what we find in their writings, should be applied in our pursuit of the happy life. We should hunt out their helpful pieces of teaching and the spirited and noble-minded sayings which are capable of immediate practical application, not far-fetched or archaic expressions or extravagant metaphors and figures of speech, and learn them so well that the words become works. No one, to my mind, lets humanity down quite so much as those who study philosophy as if it were a sort of commercial skill, and then proceed to live in a quite different manner to the one they tell other people to live. It does not matter what you bear, but how you bear it. You could leave life right now. Let that determine what you do and say and think. The chief task in life is simply this: to identify and separate matters so that I can say clearly to myself which are externals not under my control, and which have to do with the choices I actually control. Where then do I look for good and evil? Not to uncontrollable externals, but within myself to the choices that are my own. True happiness is to enjoy the present without anxious dependence upon the future, not to amuse ourselves with either hopes or fears, but to rest satisfied with what we have, which is sufficient, for he that is so wants nothing. The greatest blessings of mankind are within us and within our reach. A wise man is content with his lot, whatever it may be, without wishing for what he has not. Don't seek for everything to happen as you wish it would, but rather wish that everything happens as it actually will. Then your life will flow well. Personal development. If anyone can refute me, show me I'm making a mistake or looking at things from the wrong perspective, I'll gladly change. It's the truth I'm after, and the truth never harmed anyone. If you accomplish something good with hard work, the labor passes quickly, but the good endures. If you do something shameful in pursuit of pleasure, the pleasure passes quickly, but the shame endures. A gem cannot be polished without friction, nor a man perfected without trials. Be tolerant with others and strict with yourself. No person has the power to have everything they want, but it is in their power not to want what they don't have and to cheerfully put to good use what they do have. You will earn the respect of all if you begin by earning the respect of yourself. Don't expect to encourage good deeds in people conscious of your own misdeeds. The greatest discovery of any generation is that a human can alter his life by altering his attitude. Excellence is never an accident. It is always the result of high intention, sincere effort, and intelligent execution. It represents the wise choice of many alternatives. Choice, not chance, determines your destiny. We are more often frightened than hurt, and we suffer more in imagination than in reality. Man conquers the world by conquering himself. How does it help to make troubles heavier? By bemoaning them. You have power over your mind, not outside events. Realize this, and you will find strength. If it is not right, do not do it. If it is not true, do not say it. You should live in such a way that there is nothing which you could not as easily tell your enemy as keep to yourself. Waking up to who you are requires letting go of who you imagine yourself to be. The high-minded man must care more for the truth than for what people think. We have 2 ears and 1 mouth, so we should listen more than we say. The impediment to action advances action. What stands in the way becomes the way. Don't promise twice what you can do once. A man who has committed a mistake and doesn't correct it is committing another mistake. He who has a why to live for can bear almost anyhow. Remember 2 things. 1, that everything has always been the same and keeps recurring, and it makes no difference whether you see the same things recur in 100 years or 200 or in an infinite period. 2, that the longest lived and those who will die soonest lose the same thing. The present is all they can give up, since that is all you have, and what you do not have, you cannot lose. Ultimately, man should not ask what the meaning of his life is, but rather he must recognize that it is he who is asked. In a word, each man is questioned by life, and he can only answer to life by answering for his own life. To life, he can only respond by being responsible. No amount of anxiety makes any difference to anything that is going to happen. The happiness of your life depends upon the quality of your thoughts. Nothing, to my way of thinking, is a better proof of a well-ordered mind than a man's ability to stop just where he is and pass some time in his own company. The greatest weapon against stress is our ability to choose one thought over another. I begin to speak only when I'm certain what I'll say isn't better left unsaid. Hellenistic philosophy. All Hellenistic schools seem to define wisdom in approximately the same terms, first and foremost as a state of perfect peace of mind. From this viewpoint, philosophy appears as a remedy for human worries, anguish, and misery brought about for the cynics by social constraints and conventions, for the Epicureans by the quest for false pleasures, for the Stoics by the pursuit of pleasure and egotistic self-interest, and for the skeptics by false opinions. Whether or not they lay claim to the Socratic heritage, all Hellenistic philosophers agreed with Socrates that human beings are plunged into misery, anguish, and evil because they exist in ignorance. Evil is to be found not within things, but in the value judgments which people bring to bear upon things. People can therefore be cured of their ills only if they are persuaded to change their value judgments, and in this sense all these philosophies wanted to be therapeutic. Taoist philosophy, simplicity, patience, compassion. These 3 are your greatest treasures. Simple in actions and thoughts, you return to the source of being. Patient with both friends and enemies, You accord with the way things are. Compassionate towards yourself, you reconcile all beings in the world. Taoism is the art of being in the world, for it deals with the present, ourselves. It is in us that God meets with nature, and yesterday parts from tomorrow. The present is the moving infinity, the legitimate sphere of the relative. Relativity seeks adjustment. Adjustment is art. The art of life lies in a constant readjustment to our surroundings. Be content with what you have. Rejoice in the way things are. When you realize there is nothing lacking, the whole world belongs to you. Let your eyes see what they see, not what others want you to see. Let your ears hear what they naturally hear, not what others want you to hear. Let your mouth speak your mind freely and not be constrained by other people's approval or disapproval. Let your mind think what it wants to think and not let other people's demands dictate your thoughts. If your senses and your mind are not allowed to do what they want to do naturally, you are denying them their rights. When you cannot think, sense, feel, or act freely, then your body and mind are injured. Break these oppressions and you will cultivate life. Be careful what you water your dreams with. Water them with worry and fear, and you will produce weeds that choke the life from your dreams. Water them with optimism and solutions, and you will cultivate success. Always be on the lookout for ways to turn a problem into an opportunity for success. Always be on the lookout for ways to nurture your dream. Strength should always be complemented by softness. If you resist too much, you will break. Thus, the strong person knows when to use strength and when to yield, and good fortune and disaster depend on whether you know how and when to yield. Those who do not know how to suffer are the worst off. There are times when the only thing we can do is to bear our troubles until a better day. To solve a problem, you need to remove the cause, not the symptom. To know and to think we know not is the crown. To not know and to think we know is the affliction. Knowing others is intelligence. Knowing yourself is true wisdom. Mastering others is strength. Mastering yourself is true power. If a branch is too rigid, it will break. Resist and you will perish. Know how to yield and you will survive. Only he who has no use for the empire is fit to be entrusted with it. At the center of your being, you have the answer. You know who you are and you know what you want. Life is a series of natural and spontaneous changes. Don't resist them. That only creates sorrow. Let reality be reality. Let things flow naturally forward in whatever way they like. Kindness in words creates confidence. Kindness in thinking creates profoundness. Kindness in giving creates love. A person with a mind is bound to be filled with conceptions. These conceptions prevent him from knowing things directly, so a person with a mind shall never really know. Trying to explain Zen is like trying to catch wind in a box. The moment you close the lid, it ceases to be wind and in time becomes stagnant air. A good traveler has no fixed plans and is not intent on arriving. When you are content to simply be yourself and don't compare or compete, everyone will respect you. The fact is that those who do not see themselves but who see others, who fail to get a grasp of themselves but who grasp others, take possession of what others have but fail to possess themselves. They are attracted to what others enjoy but fail to find enjoyment in themselves. On skill and calmness. If you play a game where scrap pieces of glass are at stake, you will play skillfully. If your expensive belt buckle is at stake, you'll start to get clumsy. If it's your money that's at stake, you'll fumble. It's not that you've lost your skill, it's because you're so flustered by things happening outside that you've lost your calmness inside. Lose your stillness, and you will fail in everything you do. A man with outward courage dares to die. A man with inner courage dares to live. A man like this will not go where he has no will to go, will not do what he has no mind to do. Though the world might praise him and say he had really found something, he would look unconcerned and never turn his head. Though the world might condemn him and say he has lost something, he would look serene and pay no heed. The praise and blame of the world are no loss or gain to him. Things joined by profit, when pressed by misfortune and danger, will cast each other aside. Let your mind wander in simplicity, blend your spirit with the vastness, follow along with things the way they are, and make no room for personal views. Then the world will be governed. On nature and function, a beam or pillar can be used to batter down a city wall, but it is no good for stopping up a little hole. This refers to a difference in function. Thoroughbreds like Kiji or Hualu could gallop 1,000 li in one day, but when it came to catching rats, they were no match for the wild cat or the weasel. This refers to a difference in skill. The horned owl catches fleas at night and can spot the tip of a hair, but when daylight comes, no matter how wide it opens its eyes, it cannot see a mound or a hill. This refers to a difference in nature. Now do you say that you're going to make right your master and do away with wrong, or make order your master and do away with disorder? If you do, then you have not understood the principle of heaven and earth, or the nature of the 10,000 things. This is like saying that you're going to make heaven your master and do away with earth, or make yin your master and do away with yang. Obviously, it is impossible. We may be floating on Tao, but there is nothing wrong with steering. If Tao is like a river, it is certainly good to know where the rocks are. Great power is worry, and total power is boredom, such that even God renounces it and pretends instead that he is people and fish and insects and plants. The myth of the king who goes wandering among his subjects in disguise. Travel is such a wonderful experience, especially when you forget you are.